Good evening, everybody. I think we should be live, and I would like to just take a second to make sure that I have my quality options, which I do. So, I hope I communicated this as well as I could, but for those of you who are maybe a little confused as to why there was no Stellaris last week, a developer that has, been very kind in sort of supporting me and giving me some, just attention and generally keys. Brace yourself. Had a new release on Monday, which was Industries of Titan, and I really did want to mark the occasion with a nice solid playthrough of it. Now, unfortunately, that did mean that I had to set Stellaris aside. But I think, generally my hope is always to sort of leave the Monday dedicated to Stellaris until we've sort of completed the campaign. That's usually how I handle it. It's also how I sort of present myself to, when people are asking for keys. But of course, that's always on the understanding that if I get sick or if there's a special thing that comes up, there might be a mild interruption. So my hope always is to give that level of consistency to make sure that you are able to see what you want. If you are into Stellaris and you're not into my other stuff, I would like to have that Monday be available for you to see what you're interested in. But every once in a while there are going to be things such as public holidays, or of course in this case it coinciding with the release of a game that I've been quite involved with from its beginning. And I think that falls within sort of the acceptable parameters. But with that in mind, I was given a copy of not just Stellaris, but the Nemesis update, and indeed, hey, Midori Musha! Funny story, I got something to mention to you. You'll probably laugh at this, but I'll get through my little preamble. But yes, I was given a key for Nemesis. I actually really appreciated the individual that I was talking with about that key, because I know it has been something that I can't necessarily rely on due to some quirks in terms of how certain platforms handle the distribution. But I did appreciate their comment in terms of recognizing the time that I put inside of the game, and I hope they're getting what they expected out of it. I'm certainly enjoying the new DLC, and I hope you're better informed about what the game is like, and that you're enjoying the content too, and possibly considering picking it up yourself. But with that in mind, of course, if you are given sort of this thing of value, obviously the game is the game is worth something, and I have been streaming the game with keys that have been given pretty much since Stellaris first came out, actually a little bit before it first came out. And everything except the humanoids and plantoids DLC is enabled, and something that's been given to me and necroids is enabled, and something that's been given to me from Paradox. I do have the humanoids and plantoid species portraits enabled, but those are something that I bought on my own, and I've not yet seen fit to buy the necroids, but I'm sure I will at some point in the future. So with that in mind, all of this is just to say that if you are interested in picking up Stellaris, and particularly if you're making a buying decision based off of what I'm doing here, I am very fond of Stellaris, but it is also important to remember that I have been given something in order to promote the game. I've not been asked to say anything, but it is an important disclosure to get out of the way. I will also mention, because we are currently in Steam sale territory, that Stellaris is currently 75% off, so I am Canadian. It's currently $10.99. You can buy the Galaxy Edition for $14.29. Now, it is worth remembering that there's a summer sale starter pack, so there are 7 items in that. I personally think that is not a bad deal. It sort of gives you what I think there is something of a consensus. There's something of a consensus in terms of it being a set of very good and maybe even necessary DLC. Obviously, there's some opinions in terms of what constitutes essential DLC. But it has Stellaris, Leviathans, Utopia, Synthetic Dawn, Apocalypse, Distant Stars, and Ancient Relics. And then, of course, there's other DLC for the game. So, for instance, Megacorp isn't included inside of that. But I will note that pretty much everything is half off as far as DLC are concerned. The exception to this would be the previous DLC, which is Federations. That's currently 33% off. Nemesis was just most recently released, so that doesn't have a sale. And Necroids are 20% off. That is the most recent Species pack. So not necessarily a bad time if you've been thinking about picking up Stellaris. It's not necessarily a terrible time to pick it up, as far as some of the different, just the prices for some of the different DLC. However, I will say there is quite a bit of DLC for this game, and so I'm rather happy that they have decided to put out the summer sale starter pack. And that is again, I'm not asked to say that. I just know that a big question that often comes up inside of the chat is, what do you think the best DLC are? I actually think one of the best ways to answer that is to go to the wiki, because the wiki will tell you what the paid and what the sort of patch-related updates were. And so if you are really interested in playing a Machine Empire, then Synthetic Dawn is really good for you. And if you don't have an interest in playing Machine Empire, if you don't want to make Skynet, let's say, that's probably not going to be as high of a priority for you in terms of a story pack. Now, I think there's enough in Synthetic Dawn to make it worth getting anyway, but clearly people are going to have some different opinions as far as what is essential inside of a game like this. And maybe one thing I will say for my own personal experience is that I tend to notice that people tend to discount these story packs a bit. It's important to remember that Leviathans, while this is a free, something that was added in the free update, Leviathans did give us the Horizon Signal, which is considered to be sort of the most popular event in Stellaris still. And more importantly, one of the big things about this game is going through the galaxy with your science ships and finding different things to do. And so if you feel like you keep getting the same events over and over again, particularly if you have a number of different, like the big expansion DLCs, it's probably because you skimped on the story packs. The story packs really do add quite a bit of flavor to the game, in my opinion. But as always, it is your money, and I highly recommend that you check out resources such as the wiki to say what's inside of the game, because while there's a lot of content creators that do these great sort of tier lists for DLC and such, I also think that my personal interests in a given game are not necessarily going to be overriding other people's given sort of their own interests and their own priorities inside of games. And for me, I actually think the story packs provide quite a bit. Other people may feel differently. Other people may sort of see this as a game much more focused on numbers and such. So I'm going to take a minute here to review the state of affairs. Usually I do that anyway, but especially because it's been a little while since we played, or not even a little while, but there's been a break. It wouldn't hurt to just get a quick reminder of the state of the galaxy. But Dori Misha, the reason why I said it was a little funny to see your name, I was reflecting on the fact that I had intended to put up a bunch of Cultist Simulator playlists in history, and for the life of me, I could not remember where the list that, somebody had very kindly created a list of, of past runs, and that a lot of that work had actually already been done for me. And I searched high and low in my YouTube comments and my emails, and I was feeling really embarrassed about it, because obviously it's been such a long time since I was given that information. And then I had to see a message from another source inside of Twitch, and then eventually the penny dropped, and I saw your message about all of my old Cultist Simulator playlists. So while I have absolutely no idea of what I'm going to get together to compiling them, because now I'm actually very late, but you did something really nice for me, and I've still not followed through on it on the YouTube channel, and I know it's something that would actually really help grow it. So I wanted to take a minute and say thank you very much for the effort that you did on that. I have not been the most respectful steward of that really good work, but it is actually something that I was just sort of recently reminded of and finally sort of rediscovered, and wanted to take a second to say that I appreciated that, and I'll be following up before too long. Okay, so we are currently in the Great Khan event, so essentially the Marauders, which we didn't really know of the existence of until the event triggered. They have united. This is sort of like it's not an endgame crisis, it's a mid-game crisis, but it is a pretty significant one. and they did a fantastic job of just chewing up this side of the galaxy. So far, we have been able to avoid their wrath, but they are slowly moving towards us, and I just want to make sure that I am prepared for potential expansion. And the other alternative is that I may be able to start carving off some parts of the galaxy for myself up here. Now, that is going to make my my overexpansion go up by a very large amount, but it's something that I think might be worth putting the effort into. I also made some dumb decisions last time, which resulted in the loss of some fairly valuable military assets. But there's really no point in me sort of, crying over spilt milk on that. They're gone. I'll adapt, and we'll work with what we've been given. Now, there was a very brief reprieve with the Khan. I actually really felt that I was in a position to be able to go to battle with them. And unfortunately, what happened? Hey, Cured Charlie, how you doing? I'm doing all right. Sleep hasn't really been fixed yet, and I've got some work-related stresses, but I am really happy to be back in Stellaris. And God, I sound like some politician in Iowa. I'm once again asking for your support. But I think I really do think we had a chance of taking out the Khan, and unfortunately, once we were in a position to try and take them on, their ships were faster, and so they were able to run away. But we were given a bit of a reprieve. I have a feeling that there's an ancient or a stagnant ascendancy, but one of the fallen empires is around here. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's this area here, and it seems to be that the Khan was defeated by the fallen empire. Now, if I'm lucky, I'm going to be the one to deliver the death blow, because I'm going to get a good artifact out of it. But secondary, the second defeat will be enough to take out the Khan, and as a consequence, I don't need to worry about their aggressive expansion anymore. We did have a scary moment here in the Maisa system where we actually lost the defensive structure, but the Horde fleet was so bloodied that they stopped the invasion of my territory. So in this case, we're one of the empires that has not lost territory. It's possible that the Vitresis Hive is the only other one that hasn't lost territory, but they may have lost something that I didn't realize. Now, this is an opportunity for me, because if I come out reasonably intact, I'm going to be able to take a constructor ship, and we're going to be able to take Wezen. And there's a couple of very natural places for me to sort of make my mark and claim parts of this arm for myself. So, for instance, if we take Wezen, that sort of lends itself to taking a store. I would probably want to... I mean, I could really just grab anywhere up to, let's say, Tirlam. I would need to put a claim on Sastrum. Otherwise, I would have to... So there's a couple... here's how the expansion would work. I'd go from Wezen, and I'd take Jormundir. Now, if I can take Sastrum, then... Well, either Sastrum or... Nope, Bastamor won't work, because then they can go through Fuldara. So yeah, if I can take Sastrum, Tirlam, and then I suppose I have to decide how far I want to go with this. I'm able to sort of take this arm for myself. I mean, the other alternative is I just take as much territory as I can, because I'm on reasonably good terms with these people. Wolfenstein, good to see you. I saw you in a couple of the Brace Yourself chats, which is always good to see. But yeah, basically, the fact that the Endurga Horde has been able to chew up so much of the enemy territory gives me an opportunity to spend my influence to claim regions. The other thing that's nice, I know there's a lot of comments about the fact that I've been playing very passively and that I haven't been taking territory. What's great about waiting here and having the Endurga Horde just sort of hollow out this branch of the galaxy is that in the end, if I want to do something like take the Talakura Citizen Compact, or if I want to try and prosecute some, even if I don't want to take the the vassalization route, if I just want to take some territory, the fact that I'm going to have more of my own territory so close to the region that I want to turn into a vassal, or I want to take the territory from, it's going to lower my influence costs for generating claims, and as a result, just generally allow me to do more. So it's not that I'm scared to face these enemies, although caution is always advisable in these situations. It's the fact that I'm actually able to make my influence go even further if I'm able to sort of build out my borders with the change in opportunities. So let me just catch here. We've got Olaf. Hope that you have a good stream. I can't watch today, but I hope that you kick some ass and survive the expansion. I look forward to watching the VOD. Thank you very much, Olaf. I hope everything's going well on your end. I always appreciate you stopping by, even if you can't stay, saying hello. And we've got cool facts. What's going on? I've got a galaxy where I've overexpanded. But I am largely happy where I am, except for maybe underinvesting in my military. But thanks for stopping by. I hope you find the stream to your tastes. Okay. So, this is the big problem about having a break from the playthrough. I have a little... I do need to sort of consider the state of play. So one set of expansion priorities would be to just go out to all of these other areas. So for instance, Ushikaran has an archaeological site. Obviously doing an archaeological site will carry its benefits, and so there's a pretty good argument for claiming that. Eam has rare crystals. On the other hand, expansion out into the Telga system will allow me to put some more colonists on different worlds, and I will be able to build up my productive and research capabilities with additional bodies. I think if you can expand safe, you should continue to expand. You don't need to go to war right now. Yeah, and that's the big thing for me, is that right now there's so much... Like, I would definitely have gone to war if I was much more constrained by my neighbors. But the fact of the matter is that even when it comes to the stuff I might take from neighbors, it's not really the sort of thing you want to go to war over, right? Like, there's really no special resources to be had here. There's some crystals once I sort of move through, I guess 1, 2, 3, 4 systems. That's one set of crystals. Something that I actually have a fairly large amount of within my borders already. There's some moats in the scat system. But, like, I don't know, when you sort of look at the frontier in my neighbor who I'm on good terms with, it's not exactly the sort of thing that you'd want to say, oh yeah, we totally need to invade these guys for. Mushroom Sis, good to see you. What kind of empire am I playing? Good question. So for those of you not familiar, I definitely do not play this as a strategy game. I play this as a role-playing game, and it is always a chance for me to talk about something related to the new DLC. So we are playing the Black Codex, and you know what? I'm actually going to do the fiction behind it, because I always feel really insecure about the fiction, and then people say really nice things about it after the fact. So I really would rather not be told how to play the game. I've talked about the admin sprawl for several streams. It's something that I'm very aware of, and I'm ultimately making decisions that are consistent with the idea of saying that as long as I'm able to gain resources that will overcome the penalties, and because we are at such a high level, it is increasingly difficult to justify some of that expansion. But ultimately, the expansion to new planets allows me to grow the population. Growing the population will give me the resources I need to get my bureaucratic systems up and running. And ultimately, I am accepting short-term penalties for long-term development. But the species here is the Black Codex. Accurately separating the facts and legends about the Black Codex would require membership, and anything less than membership in the higher orders would only be accurate about 60% of the time. Reputed members have ranged from Rhizome Capital's most popular televangelist, Francis Bayberry, to the unnamed head of the intelligence services of the Blessed Ilari Grand Duchy. The greatest cryptographers have been stymied by the Black Codex's use of metaphorical ciphers, while the great philosophers of lesser empires lack the computational power to bear witness to the labyrinthine sermons of Matriarch Bethen. The Black Codex knows and keeps all. What they do with the information remains to be seen. So the idea here was, because Nemesis has introduced a whole set of espionage features, something that Wiz, the Martin Anward, the designer at the time, or the sort of the lead on Stellaris, it was sort of the last component of things that he'd talked about in terms of a roadmap that had not yet been implemented inside of Stellaris. And so I wanted to do something that was focused around cryptography, but as a viewer had pointed out, the DLC is named after Philip K. Dick, and there are definitely some references to Philip K. Dick. There is actually one specific reference that I don't think chat has picked up on yet. And one of my favorite Philip K. Dick books is The Man in the High Castle. Now, I know it's an Amazon TV show now, and I've not actually really seen all that much of it. So this might be covered inside of the TV show as well. But the Man in the High Castle also makes a reference to sort of the metaphorical ciphers, ones that essentially some of the Japanese characters will have this form of cryptography that uses poetry, because while the Germans may be very good at breaking the encryption of the Japanese Empire, they do have difficulty in terms of extracting the deeper meaning behind certain references. So there's a little reference that's actually present within the text of the species. But overall, in terms of this idea, it is a group. You could sort of think of maybe some of these secret religions or cults back in history. I'm thinking of things like the Pythagoreans, who were clearly very good mathematicians, but also had what we would identify as very profound religious beliefs. They believed in abstaining from beans as seriously as they believed in the Pythagorean theorem, or that, all the world could be represented as ratios of perfect numbers or something. That's probably not very fair to the Pythagoreans, but indulge me. So I kind of wanted this idea of a species that was dedicated to sort of code making and code breaking, and instilled it with this tremendous importance. And so also with that in mind, you can sort of pull in certain threads from Gnosticism and such, sort of this other view, or this, you can almost sort of think of it as like an alternative history Christianity, where in this case, it's not, the path is open to everybody. It's actually a very narrow path, and you need study and understanding, and you need to really work at things to figure out how it's going. Or you could get this idea of this monastic community, these people who are dedicated to the study and understanding of a mystery greater than themselves. There's a bunch of different ways that you can sort of paint it, but I wanted to have a lot of those ideas running through this species. And I also really liked the idea of the fact that because it was a group that was driven by this religious belief and this understanding, this secret order, if you will, I didn't want to make it a megacorp like the subversive cult, which would probably be a little bit more consistent with sort of getting inside the enemy empires. Although, to be honest, it would actually be really neat to do a subversive cult which is focused on intelligence gathering. Like a corporation that's focused on intelligence. That might be a really neat playthrough to do, actually. But the idea here is definitely one that I wanted to just sort of explore those ideas and then see how I could represent them in a species. So those ideas, species-wise, they're intelligent. I kind of think that's a prerequisite if you're going to be talking about. Yeah, thank you, Cool Facts. This is the thing for me. Like I feel reasonably comfortable in Stellaris mechanically, but I don't necessarily find this game the most interesting in terms of just like finding the optimal playthrough. Like I think I've played this game long enough that being able to, blob out and dominate everything is like, there's an appeal. Like sometimes you just want to stomp a computer, right? But being able to use, I think to me the greatest rewards of Stellaris come from being able to use it as this great canvas on which you can paint your own science fiction story. I think it's kind of neat, and I can actually show this to you later, but like one thing that's nice about this is that every species I've played, I've worked out this backstory for them. And so through the process of playing Stellaris over the years, I've got this entire science fiction universe inside of my species list, all with a backstory, all with little details like this. And so I have the option of sort of doing this grand melee one day where I put a new species in and I get to see all of these other species that I've created over the different patches. And so it's also cool too, because each new update usually will give sort of a base theme for me to work with, and I'm sort of able to build up from that. But yeah, so we're talking about this sort of religious order dedicated to code making and code breaking. So intelligence sort of seemed to be in line with that. I said traditional, so this was kind of, again, thinking along the lines of, a group that's going to be very monastic or ordered around some of these historical groups. Of course, along the same line, communal. And because I had this idea of membership being particularly difficult, or this idea of it sort of being that, like, if you, like, so obviously today, and you can consider this religious wise, so it's obviously if you take a look at most religions today, and I mean this in no sense, there's actually a pretty broad, I've noticed there's a pretty broad spectrum of religious belief that's represented in terms of viewers. So I think it goes without saying that I'm not making sort of a specific claim here on religious belief, but I think it would be fair to say that most people's modern experience of religious belief is something that is an effort to try and be as if not approachable, I suppose at least, it's evangelical. It's bringing in as many people as possible, right? To raise the congregation numbers and just generally get people in the door. And obviously that has not been true of every religious order or every religious group. And that's definitely true for this group. If you're not smart enough, they don't want you in. If you can't figure out the code, that's your problem, and they're utterly fine if there were only to be 5 of them in a room talking about the best codes, because as far as they're concerned, there is a truth to be known, a truth to be understood, and it may only be that there's a handful of people that will understand this stuff. And so while it's a little bit of a mislabeling, I decided that I could use slow breeders to sort of represent that. That difficulty in terms of raising the groups. There's only ever going to be so many people who will understand or have the unique combination of cryptographic understanding as well as an appreciation of the depths and layers of the writings. But of course, it's not just the natural traits of the species that matter, but how the society is organized. And that's where our ethics become interesting. So obviously, fanatic spiritualist, I think that probably goes without saying. If you're doing a religious order based around code making and code breaking, that's a natural fit. And I did decide to go for authoritarian just because it seemed to be the best fit as far as sort of this very rigid hierarchy. You could probably make an argument for an oligarchy of some kind. You could even just say, they govern by consensus, right? You could maybe take some ideas here in terms of maybe development like the blockchain and some of these forms where there's an effort to try and do things by consensus. I'm certainly not suggesting that there would be a way that you could model a code orient or secret oriented group. But it seemed to me, given how I wanted to work through some of the ideas here and some of the history, that an authoritarian bent was a little bit more appropriate. So they are a dictatorial. It's not hereditary. There's a process for determining the next leader, but it's not going to be determined by the religious authority. And then the civics, exalted priesthood. Cutthroat politics, and then I did ultimately go for Byzantine bureaucracy when I got a chance to add another civic. But again, the exalted priesthood here, I kind of, I just opted to go for something that was, again, oriented towards the idea of there being an elite and a specific form of governance based on a hierarchical ordering of those who understood. I definitely wanted to go for cutthroat politics, one, because of the code breaking element, but also because of the idea that if you think of it, you know, if you have this very rivalrous environment where they care about code making, code breaking, offense or defense, cryptography or cryptanalysis, however you want to break it down, you almost can sort of see that the idea of, you know, sneaking into your rival or even your peers' files and going through their notes, that is sort of the thing that you might imagine might happen inside of this society. So while it may be communal, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's necessarily nice to each other. That there is sort of a sharpening of the techniques through the through the way they basically what they think is acceptable behavior between each other. The idea would be it's if you didn't use the right cipher, that's your problem. You know, you shouldn't get after them for stealing your stuff. You're the one who failed to properly guard the secrets that you didn't want to have known. And this person has demonstrated that they are worthy of that knowledge because they were able to obtain it and they were able to discern it when you saw it. And then again, Byzantine bureaucracy just sort of seems to be the sort of thing that, number one, it's helpful for me because, of course, I'm going to be putting so many bureaucrats in to deal with the sprawl. But of course, it just seems to be another thing here. If you see the description, the society is largely governed by a complex and, to the outsider, almost labyrinthine system of bureaucracy. An army of officials and functionaries work tirelessly to keep the government running smoothly and ensure no citizens are allocated resources they cannot demonstrate a properly filed and triple-stamped need for. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about forums, but definitely Byzantine bureaucracy seems to be a pretty good description of everything that I've talked about here. And then this was one that I wasn't expecting, but it was kind of neat to see the remnants origin. So this wasn't originally where I was going, but I liked this idea. So it says the civilization once spanned the void, controlling much of the galaxy. They were eventually defeated and almost destroyed, but after a long period of destitution, they are returning to the stars. So the relic world and being able to uncover these secrets was a neat idea. But more importantly, you also have this idea that this could have been the intelligence services of a previous empire that collapsed. And either they always had this religious bent, or that because they were the survivors and this period of being cut off from the galaxy, that you have this religious significance that's been built up. Now, this isn't a new idea, right? This is either Comstar in BattleTech or pretty much everything to do with the Imperium of Man in Warhammer 40k. But I did kind of like this idea of being able to say that there is some ambiguity in terms of their origins. But guessing I'm planning on building a sentry array sometime in the future. Yeah, I've definitely not got to a point of building megastructures yet. But a sentry array definitely seems in character, and I have no idea what it does. I have no idea what it does intelligence-wise in the game. But definitely, if it's something that gives a bonus in terms of the espionage mechanics, that would definitely be in line. So yeah, I mean, it's one of these things. There is one, and I will get on with the game. I know, like, usually at the start, there's always a review of what we're playing. I think it's good to be able to talk about sort of where the idea of this playthrough is going. But I think one of the things that's really cool about being able to play this way is that one thing I've really enjoyed about the Stellaris updates is it gives me a chance to talk about science fiction that I'm interested in. And I thought it was really cool to have some people in chat say, it's like, oh yeah, no, you're totally referencing Philip K. Dick when you do that. So it's nice that people are able to appreciate on, you know, if you put something secret in the stream, and because I've done this with a lot of different species, to have someone pick up on the reference is really satisfying, for the same reason that, you know, it's the theme of the species, right? You know, you've got that hidden knowledge that only the elect understand. But it's a chance to share stuff that you're interested in. And if you have a DLC, if you have a patch that's named after Philip K. Dick and you like Philip K. Dick, maybe being able to talk a bit about, maybe being able to talk about the, some of the ideas behind it. And maybe, like, obviously this isn't a Philip K. Dick species, but it's definitely a tip of the hat to some of the ideas that seem to be driving his better works. Obviously, there was that one direct reference to a concept that was in Man in the High Castle, but it's a really fun way to play because it lets you make decisions that are a lot more consistent with what you think the species would do, rather than necessarily saying, well, you know, this is how I get the largest number of alloys. And ultimately, for me, I find that a really neat way to play, because the events suddenly gain a very heavy significance I'm trying to come up with the right way of putting it. The story events that you run into sort of gain this new significance, and all of a sudden you're not picking what you think the best response to that event is, but rather you're picking something that might take the story into an interesting place. And I think that's always a fun place to go in terms of games. So we are influence constrained. I am most inclined towards taking the Taiga system, but there are a bunch of attractive expansion options. You know, I think actually... Oh, nope, they're already working on something else. Okay, I left a bunch of stuff for me to do. So it does look like I decided to... Looks like I already decided in terms of my expansion options, so I'm going to say that yesterday was... What would you say has been the best theme in these updates? You mean like in terms of overall, like, are you talking about the different patches and the different authors that they're talking about, or are you talking about this specific update, like what I found the most interesting? Because I think to a certain extent it winds up that could potentially be asking the question like, what is my favorite science fiction story, and I can answer that one. But I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the question properly first. So yeah, I think the expansion here is going to take care of itself. I am watching with interest what's happening with the Endurga Horde, because as far as I'm concerned, my best option is to just send a sort of an assassin fleet to deal with the Great Khan when I can, and to leave everything else, leave everything else for another time. I am, of course, rebuilding my fleet right now. Let's just double check where we're at with that. So we want 1 cruiser, 2 destroyers. Those are hopefully in the shipyards now. They are not, because I don't have alloys. So I'll probably just cannibalize the Shimini Starfleet and bring the Vernala to full strength. What's my favorite sci-fi book or movie? Oh man, there's a lot of movies, there's a lot of books. So I did get to do the Pointless Discourse podcast with Apocalypse and It Is D-Pain. So they asked me for 2 sci-fi books, and I said The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and The Man in the High Castle. And it was partly because I wanted to talk about those 2 particular books, but also I think they are really good examples of the type of science fiction that I like. But there's a lot of sci-fi that I really enjoy, and obviously alternative history is a little bit different from what people think when it comes to sci-fi. As far as sci-fi movies, I mean, I can run for like older stuff, so Minority Report or I love Kubrick, so 2001: A Space Odyssey is pretty much something I can't put through. Metropolis is a wonderful old movie, but there's a lot of really good modern stuff too. Well, modern-ish. So Ex Machina. There's a TV series called Devs that I think is really well done, and there's Arrival, which I thought was a really well done show. So in some senses, too, it can also just come down to the themes that you're interested in. Actually, I'm also one of the few people who seem to really like So there's 2 heretical beliefs that I have in terms of science fiction, and that's the modern remake of Solaris by Steven Soderbergh I actually thought was good. And I don't think Sunshine, directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland, was particularly fairly treated. I actually think that Ex Machina has a similarly weird shift in tone, and everybody seemed to really like Ex Machina, and everybody seems to really complain about the ending for Sunshine, and yet I thought Sunshine was a very well done sort of pseudo-indie science fiction film that was good. If you want weird science fiction or stuff that's hard to understand, I would definitely say Primer is a really good one. And sorry, I'm talking about a lot of movies. I wish I was talking about books more. There's another one I was going to mention in that vein. I lost it. Would you say Would you say some to a large amount of the members in your empire feel superior to others? Good question, because I suppose there's a question in terms of how much the lower orders consider the outside world rather than their own affairs. I would say that's actually a really interesting one, because of course having an important either divine mission or divine purpose does not necessarily indicate that there is a feeling of superiority. Well, yeah, I would definitely say that there's probably a feeling of superiority, in the sense that our people know that they have, like, they're on the right track and they're focused on the right things. But looks like that's the Forgotten Empire, actually, or Fallen Empire. But not to a point where I would consider... So I have had in playthroughs shifts in ethics occur. I wouldn't see the sense of superiority shifting into xenophobia. I would definitely say that this is just simply that they are very capable, that they have knowledge that others do not, and that, as you know, because what they are studying is the most important thing, by necessity, they are, you know, there has to be kind of a superiority there. That's a neat question, though. Okay, I want to focus on some game stuff as well. So feel free to keep coming in with the questions and that, but I do want to actually take some actions in the game so that you all can actually know that I'm committed to playing this thing. So I'd love to start converting some more planets, because we are flush with cash, and more importantly, we have a bunch of extra. Sorry, we've got a higher production rate now. So let's say converting our size 20 ocean. Oh, and it's only 2K. Piece of cake. Yeah, we can afford that. Thank you very much for the follow. It's always cool to talk about this stuff with people. But yeah, I mean, some of the stuff... So, actually, let me talk a little bit about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because I think Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy doesn't get quite the respect that it deserves. Because it's funny, right? And, like, funny movies don't always get Academy Awards, and... Oh yeah, I was going to fill out, so a battleship, a cruiser, and 2 destroyers. Oh, but they're upgrading, so that's why I didn't do that. That's fine. We'll work it out in a minute. I suppose I could also just, like, pull out all the Corvettes, but there won't be enough. It seems Nuranka B2 is lacking the hydrogen and helium to be classified as a proper gas giant, and is, in fact, an ice giant.
Our ships have been improved.
Okay, good news there. So let's... Ah, it's too big. Alright, where did I go wrong, then? Okay, so this thing's going to be 4. So that should bring me to 106. No, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, you know what? I probably... I think I know where I messed up. There we go. Alright, you get an upgrade. Might as well give these guys an upgrade. What were we going to say? Are other species who prove skilled in cryptography welcome as full members? Absolutely they are. So the implication by the description, and it's hard to model inside of the game, is that in fact there are high-placed individuals in the societies of other species that have a dual loyalty to the Black Codex, as well as their empire. So there's no need... You do not, like, you can be the head of an intelligence service for another species, and in fact, members of the Black Codex are particularly well suited for that type of
fleet detected.
for that type of work. But you know, it doesn't. Obviously, if it were to be a situation of a conflict, you would expect that the individual would protect the Codex's interests. What people or empires would the Black Codex most disagree with? So I suppose the game does force a division between so spiritualist empires do not like AI, and I'll be honest with you, I don't have a really good idea about how I can justify that, because clearly computing is such a big deal when it comes to, cryptography. It is the way that we're able to handle our work. Now, of course, just because AI is a different thing from being able to use computers. The fact that these species can space travel means that spiritualists don't necessarily see any conflict between their beliefs and technological progress. But it's very clear in Stellaris that if you are a spiritualist empire, you are very uncomfortable with the idea of artificial life forms. So I haven't quite worked out for myself how to. I mean, I can do it after the fact, but mechanically, I would have to say materialist empires, and that is definitely true of our neighbors, the Ichnorval archivists. We're not really in a spot where we're in all the best, all the best relations with this elder race. I would probably say. It's hard to think. Let's see. So one of the things that's been a little weird on this playthrough is that the ethics have actually wound up lining up. So we've got spiritual seekers, evangelizing zealots, and a hive mind. So there's a lot of spiritualist empires in the galaxy right now, and we can get along well enough with a democracy. I suppose there would be some disagreement over the idea of treating all knowledge as equal. But that's not the sort of thing that you would go to war over. I think it would probably be more fair to say that somebody who is not dedicating themselves to the pursuit of knowledge would be a group that they would have the biggest difficulty with. So, for instance, a megacorp would potentially be a big problem for them, because, of course, if what you're doing is just focusing so much on entertainment, they're not going to declare some sort of religious war over the issue, but it's a tremendous waste of resources, right? You're spending all this time creating entertainment that is keeping your species away from thoughtful study, and your pursuit of profit made it really easy to bribe the person who is responsible for your IT infrastructure. So we have access to all of your secrets. In this case here, they can be useful idiots, but it's also fair to say that probably that megacorp isn't producing anything worth studying in the first place. And then the hive mind we might want to get rid of just because they're too powerful. And this is the other thing too, is that there's always the question in terms of whether or not I'm going to become the bad guy in this. I haven't decided that for myself, if I'm completely honest. So there is also the possibility that we'll just turn around and say, okay, we've got the one truth, and you all need to bow to us now. Trying to decide if I want to make more jobs available. I kind of do, but we've also got a ton generator-wise. Yeah, I'll run with it. Okay, I think we've already got a battleship queued up.
Our ships have been improved.
So it looks like 2 cruisers. cruisers, and I guess two cruisers and 4 destroyers. Yeah, not even close. Blows Row. That's a nice title. Naranka B is not only an ice giant, but an ice giant made up of very unusual ices. There are pockets of Zro trapped in the within reach. I think it's supposed to be trapped within reach of the upper levels of the planet's atmosphere. Fascinating. One person we definitely disagree with is the Endurga Horde, who of course only exist to destroy everything. Oh, Chosen of the Great Khan? I don't think we're quite strong enough to be able to take them on yet, but...
Anomaly found.
This barren and lifeless world is showing signs of once having supported a biosphere. Would you say that you feel more attached to your envoys given the empire you've created and the new roles that they've been given? Oh, that's a neat one. So I do. So I've kind of gotten to the point here where we've completely penetrated the intelligence services of every empire, and at this point we're just sort of building up our strength. But yeah, it is kind of neat to see. I don't. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I do not know the characters by name. What I do love to see, though, is when I go through these windows and I see, like, very weak under everything, including the hive mind, which was an advanced start. Well, it's routine now, but even the advanced start has got something where it's like, yeah, this is actually not that hard to break. I feel a little bit of pride because there was definitely a time when I was playing this supposedly, knowledge and cryptography obsessed species that was actually not really delivering on the promise. Okay, I think as a precaution I should probably take the Dicini. Oh, nope, the Dicini's already on their way, so this is going to be a very ugly fight, but a necessary one.
One of our stations is beset by enemies.
What empires does the Codex respect the most? That's an interesting question. Am I allowed to say none? That they largely consider themselves independent of those kinds of squabbles? Our detailed survey of Habric 4A has revealed that it may once have supported life in the distant past. There are significant deposits of frozen water at the polar ice caps and beneath the moon's surface. The existence of Valley Network suggests that water may once have flowed freely. Terraforming this moon would theoretically be possible, but we do not yet possess the technology to accomplish this monumental task within a realistic time frame. This, by the way, does not necessarily mean that we are independent of galactic affairs. We're a member of the Council. But of course, we're members of the council with the full intention of using it as as a tool to advance our own ends. This is definitely happening too early. Oh, the Khan has arrived.
System survey complete.
Okay. Nova's getting in on this too. So it sure would have been nice to have some more defenses ready to go, but this will at least tie up this will at least tie up the intermediate group. Or it would have.
Spaceport martyred.
All right. Let's watch the fireworks. This is going to be really, really nerve-wracking. I wish I noticed this problem sooner. Oh, come on, where is it? Does the Codex consider itself a nation or more of an intergalactic organization a la the White Lotus Society? Oh, I don't know about the White Lotus Society, but yeah, I definitely was thinking about things like Mount Athos. So they are definitely a political entity that have control over territory. But you are a member of the Black Codex even if you do not live on a planet.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
Oh, go to hell if they're running away again. There's no way I can catch him. Or maybe I can. I suppose the question is whether or not I want to. What? Oh, that's so annoying. Okay, once they're done getting the abandoned Caravaneer ship, I gotta... Ooh. That is not a smart fight for me to take. Okay, let's see if we can get some repairs in while we wait on this. I gotta keep a really close eye on what's going on in this part of the galaxy. I hate doing this with minerals, but it's my best option right now. So I'm curious where these guys are headed. So clearly what I want is a big win on the Chosen of the Great Khan so that I can be the one responsible for ending the crisis.
System survey
But
complete.
I want to be able to take the Great
spirits have
Khan on
granted us new
in the most
wisdom.
most favorable conditions. I've also totally ignored my research, so let's take a look at what we've got here for our... I mean, there's one side of me that just wants to kick the can down the road. Yeah, we'll create a resort world, and we got upgraded flak batteries with new, more powerful shrapnel rounds. So... it seems to me advanced afterburners are a way of getting past some of the challenges I've had before. I was going to do the Ripper autocannons, but these aren't that more expensive, so... I guess we can upgrade these folks. Let's send them... so normally they patrol, but I think in this case here, let's just get
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
the group ready to go. Okay, advanced shields is something I was behind on, so an updated shield generator that produces an even stronger energy field. Only sustained enemy fire can penetrate this barrier. So we will go for... Positronic AI is pretty tempting. It is a long wait, but I think even though it's twice as much as planetary shields, we are suffering some pretty heavy technology penalties. Being able to close that gap is pretty important. And we can contact the Shroud again. Well, how could I not, right? Must focus. Reach into the Shroud. For a fleeting moment, we are lost, and a sense of panic washes over us as we contemplate an eternity spent within the Shroud. Then we regain our footing, and the terror recedes. So, a boon for ship repair. If successful, the energies of the Shroud will be channeled into a powerful boon that has a positive effect on our entire empire. We could have a medium probability of success. So, if successful, the energies of the shroud will be channeled into a powerful boon that has a positive effect on our entire... Okay, I think it says, yeah, all of these. So, look, the increased ship speed, the increased unity are probably more important for me. But I do like the idea of taking things that are more likely to happen. Sorry, I just saw a message from someone. I want to make sure that they're okay. Would you say there's a high amount of societal pressure to join the upper echelons of the Black Codex? Oh, of course, because if you're, so again, this would be an idea here of saying that if you feel that this knowledge, so again, I don't know how much you know about things like Platonism, and this idea of, the forms sort of be, well, I guess this was even just Neoplatonic interpretations of Platonism, one way or the other. Sort of forms deriving from the good, and obviously the good being a thing that is important to know, something that is worth dedicating a life of contemplation to, let's say, then I would say that it's a fairly, I would say that if you've dedicated your life to this ideal, and your high rank in this society reflects your understanding of this very important concept, how could you not want to achieve higher and higher levels? Of course, again, there's a great tension here, right? Because to a certain extent, you are dedicating yourself to sort of the acquisition and sort of the protection of knowledge, right? This code making and code breaking. And it is a very rivalrous system. But of course, within such systems, you still have a process by which people learn and understand. The matriarch, Bethen, referred to in the title, is giving sermons. There are still talks of important subjects. It's not that necessarily everybody has to lock it away and everybody figures it out on their own. So I realize I'm kind of trying to have it both ways with this. But yeah, I would say probably it's not necessarily in terms of any particular social standing, but definitely because your knowledge of this subject reflects, is a inherent good, and your positioning reflects your knowledge of the subject, then you would definitely feel a pressure to move up. C. McLaugh, thank you very much for the resubscription. I believe that is half a year, at least if Twitch is telling me correctly. I really appreciate the resub. Sorry, I was talking about the Shroud before as well. So I'm going to do the ship repair just because I really like good chances. And it's not like I don't need ship repairs, right? So our telepaths have managed to establish a temporary conduit between the Shroud and our starships. Using their psionic powers, our crew members are now able to perform limited field repairs, mending hull fissures with their minds alone. Is the Codex affected by nepotism at all? That's an interesting one. I wouldn't necessarily... I don't conceive of it as necessarily being one that is... so my conception of it would be that it is not one in which you would look at it from the outside and say, this is a problem they need to deal with. On the other hand... As with any story, right? You don't want it to be just one note, right? Even like villains are interesting if they have redeeming qualities or if they have certain motivations that make them interesting. Heroes are interesting if they have certain flaws. I mean, this is kind of Watchmen's whole thing. Like, how many comics after Watchmen apparently thought that like having a limp was an interesting character trait. because the flawed heroes were the in thing. So, it's I would say that there is, as with anything, you could even have like a really good company to work for, and you're probably still going to have like a couple of managers who are not very good, or a couple of people who are not pulling their weight. But I wouldn't say it would be the sort of thing that you would see as a structural problem within the codex itself. So affected by, within any sufficiently large society, you're going to have all manner of experience. But the hope here, of course, would be that its rivalrous structures would lead people who are ultimately not performing, people who are there for reasons other than their merit or their ability. The hope would be that they're ultimately found out to be frauds because they're not able to keep their secrets, or they're not able to understand the harder material. And the reason why you might notice that one, it's kind of like a little bit more of a specific answer. If I kind of follow along with Alexis Kennedy's view here on the idea of world building, as in not necessarily being very productive to like sit down and work out every detail in advance. I think he calls it like reverse Vogons. I definitely like working with broad strokes and sort of seeing where the idea takes me. But this is one I actually specifically considered because I wanted to sit down and think about whether or not I would do an imperial or a dictatorial or a dictatorial role. And I thought that dictatorship was a little bit more appropriate for what I had in mind, because I didn't necessarily like the idea of the head of state being the one to sort of appoint their successor. I sort of figured that there would be a process, however Byzantine or hard to understand,
Our ships
that
have
would
been
ultimately
improved.
lead to the sort of advancement of certain
System
individuals.
survey complete.
Okay, so the Great Game, better star bases, or the Fleet Logistics Corp for lower upkeep and better capacity. What was I thinking when I went for overwhelming force? Okay, I went for overwhelming force because of the fire rate. That's fine. Ship upkeep sure seems good. But then so is the Great Game. I think I'm going to do Logistics Core first. Have there been large movements to change the codex system in the past? Good question. So yes, the discovery of psionic potential has actually caused great changes within the context of this game. So in this case, for our Ascensions, we decided to go for... we decided to go down the mind over matter path and transcendence. I haven't really interacted with the shroud mechanics all that much before, but I thought that would be a neat path to follow. And of course, we had the Zro sort of event chain, so that was a fun little revelation. And I think as a result, the Black Codex embracing its psionic potential and using it for... So we potentially had a diplomatic incident with the Fallen Empire by snooping in on their meetings, and they found out. And so I would say, the knowledge of and the embracing of those abilities would be a large social change. I have not quite gone so far as to changing the overall ethics. Holy crap! Okay, we'll survive this. That's fine. I thought this was within my own territory. Although I do want to know where the Khan went. It's kind of like having a spider in your room and losing sight of it. It's like you kind of know it's there, but by the way, even if you are arachnophobic,
We are spreading our faith to a new world.
Please don't kill the spider if it's in your room. It didn't do anything to you.
Special project complete.
Caravaneer is old with defects. Likely due to the vessel being a civilian transport, the shipboard databases were not fully scrubbed as part of the decommissioning process. While nothing else of value was found aboard the ship, our data scientists have managed to recover partial references to unknown alien technologies. So, autonomous mining drones from that. I guess one good bit of news here is that we are getting a little bit more influence. Because I'm not really expanding out. But my shipyards are idle, and that makes me sad. Okay, so first of all, this battleship needs to be in the group. So we wanted 3 more cruisers. Let's get that out of the way right away. I think I'm also willing to spend money on like fully outfitting the fleet, because it's pretty clear that Maisa is not in a position to defend itself right now. So those 4 destroyers. Yeah, I'll wait until it's full. Oop. Okay, Chosen the Great Khan's coming back for more, it looks like. Oh. What's in the system? Okay, they don't have any ships for construction on their way yet. So if they come in and try and move on us, I think I'll tolerate it. Actually, you know what? Let's move my people to Entham. That'll be a good place to make a stand if we have to. The Zaxoids and the Talakor. Ah, nuts. I wanted to try and break that up. So Talakor was going to be who I tried to vassalize, but they got to it first. So soon the last vestiges of Talakoran independence will be stripped away. Unlucky for me, because the Zaxoids they're not a rival formally, but they are sort of an unofficial rival. I don't think this is a fight worth pursuing right now, though. I don't think I can afford to have the Khan breathing down my neck. And still have to deal with, and then have to fight a war. So I'm gonna be, if they turn left, I'm gonna be very interested to see where this goes. Oh, they're going for it. So I think the right call for me here is not to try and defend the indefensible. So we'll go to Entham. Okay, so they're heading to Wistral. Are they? No, they gave up.
The apostates are after our spaceport.
Oh, interesting. So they're probably going to wind up in a fight with the archivists.
Construction complete.
They're coming back for more. I really hope we can at least catch these guys. Actually, we may wind up with a con fight on our hands regardless. Uh-oh. Okay, no, that's a scientist. That's fine. Okay, who's a good engineer? We've got a level 5... Level 6, and they're good at propulsion, so you're off the Deveric. The science ship's not doing anything. Yeah, this is a good pilot. Okay, so why aren't you doing anything right now? Oh, that's right, because you were running away from the bad guys. So I'll just send them on some manual survey missions. I am, of course, particularly interested in... Oh, yeah, nope, we're fighting the Chosen of the Great Khan, so with that in mind... Take the military... Yeah, we'll still pile on the... Stay put. If they get away again... Oh, they did. This is always going to happen.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
I'm gonna take a shot at making it, but it ends at the Wezen wormhole if we can't deliver. Do you like alloys? Do you like metals and gases? Hard workers? Precious minerals? Yes, we thought you might. What can you offer us? We have one ore, rich luminous ore, torn right from stone, sparkling minerals for the Black Codex. But we hunger, we thirst. Grant us 1,000 food, and we shall supply your builders, your makers, with 500 minerals. Well, given that this is monthly production, and I only make 24 a month, this really isn't that useful, so... You're experiencing an intense amount of serotonin right now, and it feels fantastic. What brought this on, Mushroom Sis? Not in... well, actually, let's say, can you get back to us later? Because I think they come back with a new deal in that case. Okay, are they... They're not going to stop the... They're not going to stop the maneuver, but I bet we can at least catch these guys before... Oh, and again, I missed social research. I don't even remember what we had researched before. A Thrall world? That must be new. I don't remember those being in the game before. Okay, efficiencies of scale for better resources, although higher upkeep. Durasteel, better building slots, but a faster development speed, but it's also costly. Let's just do a Thrall world so that I can chew through some of my old society research. Okay, let's see if we can grab this guy. We got him. Oh, they're mad. This could be an incredibly costly mistake.
Evading heretics.
Oh, that's really cool, Mushroom Sis. So, I think I owe you a congratulations as well. Is there, if there's a, I know I tend to be pretty generic in terms of my terms of address on the stream anyway, but if there's a way that I can, you'd prefer to change in terms of how how I address you, let me know, and I'll do my best. Obviously, streaming is not the easiest in terms of keeping track of all of that sort of stuff, so I hope that I can treat you with respect while also, being gently reminded when I fall short. But congratulations on that, because I know my experience with some surveys and sort of people's reactions to that stuff, but also what it means to have those questions asked, definitely gave me an appreciation for the importance of that, of basically the importance of recognizing that and being able to address it appropriately. So I'm actually really happy that you got such a positive response, and specifically from a large community, because obviously smaller streams, you can, I don't know if you can always count on it, but it's definitely something that you would, like, because they're more tight-knit communities, you would sort of kind of expect them to behave a certain way. But to have that sort of recognition, to have that sort of appreciation within a larger community, I think is really cool. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, no real point in me buying up the alloys yet, although there is a thing I want to do with my credits that I wasn't doing, and that's a lot more terraforming. Let's get ourselves up to down to 1,500 in terms of a surplus. Broke my rule, 10k. Goodbye, Sam. They, them now. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate it when people ask first, because it shows they're accepting and want to make you feel as comfortable as they can. Yeah. I think one of the things, there is someone I know who, like, for them, I believe it's it's probably the most permissive set of terms. So to a certain extent, I'm a little bit lucky in the sense that the people I know don't have a particularly strong view of it. And in one sense, like, that's helpful for me because, it's hard to screw that up. But I think, I think the biggest thing that I have learned, and actually I think one person who's been really helpful to sort of be a little better educated on this for myself is Asia Kate Dillon, who I think is quite a good actor, in addition to being a very good advocate for these issues. And one thing that they very commonly say is that, everybody's learning. I'm learning, and it's nice to sort of, I think the thing is, for me, there's a benefit to being able to be myself, and myself is naturally curious, open to, I think a really important skill to have, or an important, a very important sort of, I guess, I don't want to say priority, but like one thing that I think is valuable to have is the willingness to admit that you might be wrong on something, or the willingness to, deal with a different idea and work with this new state of the world. And one of the ways that you can enable that is to be understanding. And of course, I also know from my university time that there's a lot of people who may be very well-meaning on social issues, but some of that manifests itself. All right, so they are running away from the Sylev system. So what that's going to mean for me is we're going to move on from Wezin. We're going to go back to the base to hopefully refit the ships. We are going to come up with a better answer to this, but right now I think I have every reason in the world to be not to chase the con down.
Evading heretics.
But yeah, like I think the big one for me is that because I get the benefit from being able to make those mistakes in a sympathetic environment, right? Where if I don't use an appropriate pronoun in a case where I really should have known better, to not have someone jump down my throat on it, even if it's something that, under the social circumstances, people would say that that's understandable or that's totally fine. It helps me correct my behavior, and it helps me address people in the way that they want. And so it's one of these cases where I actually really appreciate it when people are open about it, because if I'm making a mistake, I also want the opportunity to correct it. On the other hand, I also know there's another half of this equation, which is that if people are always being, and often deliberately, misgendered, mislabeled, misaddressed, I don't think is really the proper term, or the errors always go in one certain direction, then that just becomes another form of bullying, and that is something I'm very uncomfortable with. So it's one of these cases where I think that comfort goes both ways, in order to try and create as welcoming of an environment as possible. And obviously, as a content creator, I have every incentive to do so, because being able to have more people to share a game with is fun, and I'm not entirely sure that gender is the most interesting axis along which I can cut my audience, right? But also just a chance to be able to gain a greater appreciation for people's experience, and to be able to understand what some of these things mean is a lot. That's why I brought up the survey thing, because it was actually really interesting. We had, again, I don't want to give this story too much, because I don't think it's something that will give away the individual, but I think it's good to be cautious in terms of telling these stories. But I was doing a survey, and it's now mandated that there be a gender question. So there's a sex question, there's a gender question. And what was interesting about that one, I definitely remember the hostile responses, whereas people are like, we don't believe in other. And as far as I'm concerned, my answer to that is the same as any other one, which is, that's fine. I can, I'll report. If you have any other additional comments, I can add them at the end here. Of the options, which would you identify? And they'll obviously say, male. It's usually male. Let's be honest here. But what interested me, and I wasn't the one to talk to this person, but there's also the option to call back. And there was a moment where this person called back, and they changed their answer. And so by the inclusion, presumably what has happened here, right, is that there is, by the inclusion of that question in the survey, person felt that it was okay, between their natural response when they were first asked and hanging up the phone, they felt comfortable enough with who they were that they could that they could call back and change, because they felt not just strongly enough in terms of what it meant for them, but to, either accurately respond to the survey or whatever. And that was kind of telling for me. And again, this might just be an example of how really out of touch I am on stuff. I thought that was really interesting because in my own individual experience, I don't think, or I don't have to think a lot about this. And I do on occasion run into I want to be careful in terms of how I say this, because I don't mean to say this in a callous way. There can be circumstances under which, I sometimes wonder if, actually this is not the way I want to exactly say what I'm saying. But to me, as an outsider, it can sometimes just be a question of language games. Because there's obviously a set of terminology that exists for me, I'm not going to appreciate the, even just the practical difficulties of it. And to see that there was a change in behavior, and that there was somebody who felt strongly enough about that definition and that meaning that they would call back to, let's face it, nobody gets a survey at dinner time and says, "Oh, aren't I so glad that, that this thing happened." To understand that meant enough, and that something had changed between that question being asked and that person calling back, sort of gave me an appreciation of saying that there's probably a set of issues at stake here that I don't have enough of an appreciation for, and that, I probably could stand to sort of learn. And the nice thing is that it doesn't cost you anything to have empathy. If I see somebody making a big deal about something, I don't really give anything up to correct my, my terms, to be able to address people the way that they want. But with that in mind too, because I also like kicking around ideas in the back of my head, and one of those things can sometimes be culture wars. It is also nice to be able to have a working example in my own mind about something that happened in the course of doing work that gave me a better understanding of the world. So there's my little anecdote for what it's worth. Of course, I'm always going to appreciate this as something of an outsider, but I don't... I definitely get to appreciate, I suppose, a better... I also just want to take a quick look at the Talakor. It's 5... Oh, so if they incorporate the Talakor and the scores go together... No, but then I'm double counting the Federation. No, they're not a member of Federation. It's possible that they will actually rival me in terms of council size, so I want to be careful about that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess, to be honest with you, this is such a silly way of putting it. I just like learning more. It's kind of neat to have a different understanding of the world as a result. Okay, so we lose diplomatic weight from the economy due to pangalactic recycling initiatives, and we get consumer goods. So we originally wanted more consumer goods in the past. How's my economy relative to my rivals? So I'm at 866. They're at 757. Okay, so my economy is definitely one of my stronger traits. If we add their 202 to 757, they are technically a little bit higher than me. So I might be giving myself enough rope to hang myself with here, but let's do the support just in case. All right, and my tech world is being neglected. So let's we've already got enough city districts to build specialized buildings. So let's get another person working on energy first. Sorry, I also didn't mean to make a meal out of the topic. Like, obviously, it may not be something that you want to discuss in depth, but I was really happy that I was really happy to hear that story. Thanks for sharing it. Okay, we can activate for 150 influence the Spirit of Jabaxi to seek guidance. So I think in this case here, because I'm patching up my borders, I'm going to leave the influence for another time. Let's build our star bases. Oh! The Vitresis Hive has leveraged their council powers to declare the resolution repeal buzzword standardization as an emergency measure. And I guess I can't veto it. Wait a minute, but why am I getting rid of the buzzword standardization if I support this? Don't I want the buzzword standardization? The agreement we signed giving you access to our database has run its course. Would you like to extend it for another 10 standard years, or do your researchers no longer require the information we offer? We would like to extend the deal. Excellent. Our databanks shall remain available to your scientists. The other thing I'm worried about is whether or not I've forgotten to... So, not worried about terraforming. But what about colonization? I think we are in good shape there. We have a bunch of terraforming that's happening. Okay. The biggest problem, remember how I was mentioning how the Vitresis really just, they're at a point where they just kind of need one more supporter to be able to outweigh the rest of the galaxy. So I'm a little worried about what happens with the Zaxoids here. Our detailed survey of Hicklum 5 has revealed that it may once have supported life in the distant past. There are significant deposits of frozen water at the polar ice caps beneath the planet's surface. The existence of valley networks suggests that water may once have flowed freely. Terraforming this planet would theoretically be possible, but we do not yet possess the technology to accomplish this monumental task in a realistic time frame.
Debris analyzed.
Okay, so I got a little lucky here. Obviously, I was putting my science ship at risk. But some extra points towards the Ripper cannons and then some physics and engineering research. It's hard to complain. Let's get back to... Oh, looks like we were already exploring the parts of the galaxy that I want to see. Okay. So I suppose the next question is there a science world that... Yeah, we've already got everybody looking at the science worlds. Okay. More auto exploration till I have a better idea about what to do with my... Matrisev's Hive have broke off their research agreement with the Giroid Empire. They no longer wish to share their secrets. So I'm not worried about that again. We're gonna do our expansion first, and then we'll worry about the other details. Oh, but I can. How much you want to bet my shipyard's idle? Ugh. I'm gonna get back on track. Okay. This Raider does nothing for me. The Decini Starfleet needs extra units. Surely these... I don't know what's going on with some of these. Okay, so this one I kind of get as being an odd duck, and it's like it's its own ship. So let's just send them over there. Let's take Nova. They're obviously their own thing. The Canalis Starfleet is a derelict, so presumably I can't even add it with the Fontana. What I don't get, though, is I would have thought that these two should be able to... Okay, so these can be combined. Now the Fenty, what's the deal with them? So they're Yakaram and Valorg. Okay, they count. I don't know what caused the difference. 4, 8, 11, 12, 4, 8, 13, 20. Okay, so I'm 1 destroyer short, and then 8 corvettes. That math... No, that math does... Nope, that math doesn't add up. Where'd I go wrong? Ah. Two destroyers. Sorry, I'm really slow today. I think I can afford to do the upgrades. Pirate sighted. Our trade route in Jebin's Maelstrom system is poorly protected and passes through what has largely become lawless space. An increasing number of pirate smugglers and other criminal elements have been drawn to the system, and they now raid our shipping with near impunity. So we kind of knew that was going to come up. Got 1,100, so fortunately the Fortuna fleet is able to handle it. And better still, they're all in roughly the same area. Goes Joe McCarthy, it's Comrade Chalk. How are we today, Chalky? You seemed a bit down and or existential crisis-y yesterday. I'm kind of down and existential crisis-y all the time. I've not been sleeping very well, and work stuff is sort of in the way. I've got 8 more long-form questions for a job application, which is in my current position, and frankly, my employer is not attractive enough to be asking so much from its employees. I'm doing it because I have to. But mostly I'm just trying to catch up on stuff. So I've got a bunch of tutorials for Industries of Titan that I want to record, and I still haven't finished writing them, let alone update. Oh, sorry, I owe somebody. Sorry, there's one more message I want to send. No, actually, I'm going to keep that time for myself. Oh, that's a cool question. Cool fact. Is identity theft considered a crime in your empire? Let me take a minute to. Sorry, I'm just rubbing my eyes, like, but I'm like rubbing it through fabric, so it's okay, right? That's a neat one. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's just so much to do. And the lack of sleep has been a tricky one. Good reminder, though. For those of you who like the Oblivion videos, there will not be a new one tomorrow. I might just do like a rerun of the previous one. The video I was recording last week, the recording was interrupted before it could complete. For those of you who've ever had to record in an MP4 container, you know if that happens, you lose the video forever. So, you know, that's not a good reason, but that is the reason why there is unfortunately no Oblivion tomorrow. But I did get the next one recorded while Uncle Cracky was streaming, and that gives me a chance to shout out the man himself, who's back to streaming, was doing Chimera Squad recently, which is a game I am very fond of, and I think is I should actually maybe stress too, I'm going to be really strict on my finish time tonight because I am going to need to finish this job application, and it's going to take me hours. So it's due at the end of today. So yeah, needless to say, I'm under a bit of a deadline. But this is about Cranky. So Uncle Cranky's back to casting. He was doing a little Dead Cells the other day. Been running through a lot of XCOM Chimera Squad, which I'm very fond of. New Zealand streamer. And somebody who I know has had a little bit of difficulty in terms of just kind of getting and keeping an audience that is active in chat. So for those of you that do enjoy interacting in chat, I do know that Cranky loves to interact with people, and if you get a chance to speak with them, I know it would be appreciated. Obviously, I do not expect people to go and watch streams out of pity. I hope that people watch streams out of interest. But I thought it would not be, you know, you always want to be careful about saying this stuff, right? Because it's like, you know, you don't want to make somebody sound like people are watching under protest. But I also know a lot of you really do enjoy interacting with streamers, and I do often find it's very easy to recommend streamers who tend to do a bit better with an audience watching. Because you have sort of this nice double coincidence of wants. You have people who want to interact with a streamer, and you have people who are happy to and tend to do their better work when they have something to respond to. This is actually why I think if you are interested in streaming and you're not sure that you can keep babbling on at great length like I have a tendency to do, one thing that you can do to really help yourself is to co-cast with someone, because it gives you something to bounce off of. But in this case, again, I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm certainly not shouting out Cranky out of pity or suggesting that you talk, but this is actually a strength that can be built on, that if you happen to like interacting with a stream, and one of the things that keeps you, one thing I often hear is, you know, one thing they like about the stream is the fact that I'm a small broadcaster, and that it affords them a certain level of attention that they wouldn't necessarily get in a large broadcast. You know, I can definitely recommend, if that's the sort of thing that appeals to you, I would definitely recommend checking out Uncle Cranky, because it's one where I know that is something he is actively looking for and would definitely appreciate it. He's also been doing Hades recently, which he's very fond of. You know, I liked it, except that obviously they couldn't finish making the game, and so they added Theseus and the Minotaur, and you know, instead of admitting they couldn't finish the game, they just made the boss impossible to beat, and then kind of blamed the players for not going through it. But other than that defect, I thought Hades was a pretty good game. So, And on the odd chance that somebody does not know or like doesn't want to play Hades as a result of me saying that, that is a lie. I am kidding. I hate that I have to do that, but I do realize it's the internet and sarcasm doesn't always come through, even though I hear on the phone from people constantly. It's like, I can hear you smiling. Needless to say that is not an accurate representation of Hades. It is, however, it is a statement that reliably raises Cranky's blood pressure. So I'm just keeping New Zealand's doctors in good shape. So I owe an answer to, is identity theft considered a crime in your empire? I guess I didn't really think about it. I would suppose. So here's the thing. Okay, this is I'm trying to come up with an answer that's interesting in the context of playing Stellaris while also sort of acknowledging the limitation. Oh. Are you playing as the? Yes, I did know that actually. Yeah, I think most of the funny thing actually about so much of the Greek myths as well is that when you actually look at the details, most of the people that are like, you'd think would be the good subjects of the material actually wind up to be really reprehensible people. And you maybe wouldn't want to make a game after them. But I can't remember if you'd told me that fact before. Anyways, so I owe cool facts. Sorry for the abbreviation, by the way, but the thing to keep in mind about my empire is because I'm authoritarian, I also have room for slavery. Let's see if I can get an example, right? So, and you'll also notice, I suppose you can say something that's like, yeah, and it sure looks like it's slavery of everything that's not a black codex, like an Imutherian race. So the thing to keep in mind here is that the monastic community analogy falls apart in the sense that I think if you think of something like Le Grand Chartreuse or like Mount Athos or something like that, these are pretty well, pretty self-contained communities that can sort of maintain themselves. And I think it's fair to say that that's not really what the Black Codex is here. That it's enough of a functioning society in that there can be... So, like, it's really hard for me to say that the... I guess I'd put it to you this way. If I want to try and come up with some sort of a lore reason for why mineral extraction will bring you closer to an understanding of the... of the great numinous mysteries that the Black Codex has dedicated itself towards. Like, I'm going to have to do some pretty interesting mental gymnastics here. So it would be fair to say that there is a different set of rules depending on who you are. I think it would be fair to say that there's probably a standard set of laws in place that just simply allow society to function. So this would mean under standard, like under normal conditions, let's say, that if you take something from a storefront or whatever the equivalent would be in this society, there is a very good reason why we have property rights. To be able to distinguish, what my stuff is relative to your stuff, and to say that I have, there's a certain expectation in terms of what I am allowed to do with my stuff, and there should be some prescriptions against you doing certain things with my stuff, and vice versa. On the other hand, I was also talking about the idea of stealing other people's research. And I think in that sense, that's a very different, that would be something that is maybe handled internally, that's not necessarily a job for the police, but instead that is much more a matter of the machinations of the Black Codex itself. So I think to get back to your question in terms of the idea of identity theft in the Black Codex, I think it was just a simple criminal matter. If it's somebody who's maybe not an initiate, there's, standard laws apply. And it would seem to me that it's probably in the interests of most people that there be some penalty for, for identity theft, and particularly the desire to prevent the negative consequences of that. And I think it would be fair to say that even within the context of the higher orders, identity theft could definitely be the sort of thing that you would refer to as tradecraft, right? It is definitely a way in which you can gain access to information. I think there would probably be a very... I think they'd be very interested to hear your justification as to why that was necessary to be done internally, as opposed to be something to be done on others. But I would say at least that there's probably some gray zone if there was a sufficient, let's say, a sufficiently doctrinaire reasoning behind what you did. Imperium of Man is a very popular one for people to play as Uncle Cranky. I believe there's even a Warhammer 40k mod. But. Centenarian. Exciting news from our fleet admirals is being broadcast over Quantos. Our adopted space amoeba, Nova, has just reached an impressive 100 years of age. Though a grizzled centenarian, it appears age has proven to no impediment to our amoeboid ally. In fact, our fleets report Nova's presence on the battlefield has only grown more formidable over time. Nova has become a force even the best equipped battleship would have trouble contending with. Seeing her billowing flagella enter a system never fails to lift the Emutherian spirit. Alright. New combat skills. Let's take a look at Nova. Let's see. Oh, here's a question. Is Nova a boy or a girl? Or are those even meaningful distinctions for amoeba? Look at that. Look at that beauty. I really love the detail that goes into the models in this game. That's probably a little too close. Like you can kind of see the seam, or not the seam, but like you can really see the. But I don't know. This is a very impressive looking game. Hopefully, some of those skills, by the way. So this is a pretty meaty little development. However, it's also still slow. 0 out of 10 not bubbles. Variety is the spice of life.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
I was probably too aggressive on the minerals, but I'm really tired of dealing with it. All right, I got to figure out what I'm doing with my Thrall worlds if it comes to it. Through the creation of special slave breeding worlds, we can ensure that we will always have a steady supply of disposable laborers. So, naval capacity or command limit. I guess the capacity is a little bit more important for me. Everybody doesn't like the name. I feel like I betrayed chat. Did you know, I don't know if you know this, Cranky, but you know that there is a Warhammer 40k 4X game, right? Gladius Relics of War.
Construction complete.
I had a pretty good time with it. I think I unfortunately ignored this pirate fleet, but... Oh, look. Good guys are on the way. Alright. Please destroy them before they destroy mine.
Heretic fleet detected.
Uh-oh. Okay, that's not as big of a worry. Again, I still want to find the Great Khan. What did that cost us? Nothing. All right, cool. I guess we can get you to heal up. You have Gladius. You've seen you play Frostpunk and Civ, though, so we both know how that ends up. It's so. I'll be honest. Like I feel like Civ is a little bit. So it's by the same developer who did. I think it was called Pandora. I think they have some interesting ideas in those games for sure. And I'm not saying that in like the sort of I didn't like this very much, but I don't want to say I didn't like it very much sort of way. Like, I do mean that I think they are interesting 4X games, and I think they have interesting ideas. The problem for me, and I honestly feel like this is a problem for everyone who makes a 4X game, is that Civilization is a really easy contender, in my view, for, like, the greatest game ever made. And if your competition or your standard is the greatest game ever made, and like obviously I realize that is very contestable, particularly among a Paradox audience. Like there might be some people who don't want to hear that about Civilization relative to some of these other ones. But for me, like Civilization's a really special series, a really incredible game. That is one that I feel very comfortable giving such an exalted label. The challenge is that when you make a 4X in that context, like it's really hard to stand out. So I was thinking of getting the DLC for Gladius sort of sight unseen, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, because as interested as I am in that game, sometimes I just want to go back and play Civ 6. So I should give it a proper go over again, because I did think there was actually some neat stuff, but Space Marine is still the most masculine game you've ever laid eyes on, even years later. Do I have Space Marine? Let me just double check. I'm so sorry. I know so much of this is not directly Stellaris related, but hopefully hopefully the digressions are interesting enough that they can sort of justify the side. So are we talking the Sega published game? I can't remember the developer name, so I'm bringing it up. Oh, Relic made this. I had no idea. But Warhammer 40k Space Marines, you're Captain Titus, a Space Marine of the Ultramarines chapter and a seasoned veteran of countless battles, that one. Because I do have it in my library, but I've never played it. Esteemed Matriarch Tigi Dakara, a decade ago, the Black Codex pledged to support the Artisan Troop, and so you have. The time of your patronage is coming to an end, but we would be remiss not to ask, would you care to renew your subscription to the finest arts and crafts in the galaxy? So yes, and we have the money to back it up. And in fact, I have a surplus, so we're going to start terraforming again. Okay, actually, here's a way that I can relate 40k back to Stellaris. And this is one thing that kind of impresses me about Paradox, although it's easier for me to explain... detected. It's easier for me to explain how Paradox was able to do this with Stellaris than it is for me to answer some of the other things. Think of the question of franchises, okay? So, when I say Games Workshop, everybody in chat is immediately going to have an idea of what that means. And in fact, I think people are going to have the same idea of what that means. And I mean, of course, this is what any owner or any like group that does sort of creative or otherwise, you know, that works sort of in the whole entertainment or mindshare business wants to have, right? Just like, you know, Riot probably finds it very easy to tie its other games towards their League of Legends property than it is for them to sort of invent entirely new worlds to, you know, set their fighters or whatever in. So in the case of Stellaris, there's a couple of smart things that they've done here, which is number one, there is no, in a land where laughter was king. No, there's no opening crawl. There's no description of the state of the world. There's no learning that you need to do in terms of why the galaxy is the way that it is. Stellaris is like all of science fiction, the game. And that doesn't mean, like, if you go in and you take a look at the pre-built species, and if you look at the trailers for the game, you will see a fairly well-developed sort of lore. You have this backstory that's going on in the world of Stellaris. Gotta think about Comfort the Fallen, too. Because this is all messing with my ability to get stuff done. Just trying to look at, like, where my relative advantages are. Okay, Comfort the Fallen. What does this give me? Smaller diplomatic weight from tech hired. No! No, 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 no. But yeah, so in the case of Stellaris, there's a couple of smart decisions behind it, which is number one, you don't need to worry about lawsuits. It's the modders that are making the Warhammer 40k mod or the Star Wars mod. It's not you. But more importantly, you are letting people sort of fill in their own mind what this game or what this world is about. And that can be a really satisfying way of playing a game like this. On the other hand, the branding and all of the IP work, as far as Paradox is concerned, in my opinion at least, has happened, that's happened earlier on. Paradox is the place where you go to play these big, complicated, grand strategy games, and essentially the one-liner on Stellaris is to say, this is that type of game that you like in a science fiction setting. So you've got kind of the two hands. So I can't give it I can't say that it's a pure example of here's how a franchise is born, right? The franchise kind of already existed in the sense that Paradox Development Studio has a reputation for making a certain type of game that people are really into. Now, I will say I give them tremendous credit for making a game that I think is very accessible. This game is definitely the gateway drug to a lot of other Paradox style games.
Evading heretics.
This is annoying. How strong are they? Nova. Swat that fly, please. We'll bring the rest too. Maybe make sure there's no backup coming through the wormhole. But yeah, so I mean, the branding just happened a little bit earlier on in the process. This is a real sync on my influence, by the way. Now, contrast that to something like BattleTech. So, here's some examples of games that have worked really well in this sort of environment. BattleTech, right? There was a time when BattleTech didn't exist, and yet BattleTech has spawned, a sort of a resurrection in terms of the Harebrained Schemes game. It's got, the MechWarrior series. It's got tons of books. It's a role-playing game. It's a tabletop board game, tabletop war game. It's had VR centers. I believe the VR centers are still active. It's a thing that just like people know what they're getting when they get BattleTech. And I don't think FASA was like a really well-known entity at the time that BattleTech was created. And likewise, you know, there was a time in history where Warhammer 40K was just a miniatures game, that people didn't know what the Emperor, you know, the Imperium of Mankind was. They didn't know what Tyranids were. In fact, if I recall correctly, the whole idea of like gene stealers and stuff like that, it was kind of like their alien ripoff, and like the Tyranids weren't really a thing. Like it was the idea of like gene stealer cults, and I think they needed to sort of like tap dance around the lore a little bit to try and incorporate it with the Tyranids and such. And this is the one thing I've still never really gotten. Like, I have no idea how companies go from being unknown to being able to develop this kind of fanatical devotion for this world and this lore. Because if you visit the Warhammer wikis, it's absolutely insane. I cannot fathom writing that much on a subject, let alone reading it. But like every page in that wiki has got like tens of thousands of words on a subject, it feels like. And I don't know, like there's only so far that you can say that the imagery is really appealing, right? Like, and it is, right? You know, like stuff that looks cool sells well for sure. But I'm fascinated in terms of how this stuff gets created. What would the Black Codex think of today's society? Ooh, that's an interesting one. So probably their first observation would be too many security holes. Not enough protection of deep secrets. I would probably say that they would not view... I do not think they would view this particular... you know, where the world is right now in a particularly positive light. That its focus would be very short-term for seemingly very trivial matters. It's, you know, it's dedication to... Like, I don't want this to become like my critique of society, right? Like, I don't want to make it sound like that. But here's the thing. If you think about the story that, with the discovery of the irrational numbers, this is almost certainly apocryphal, but there is the idea that the Pythagoreans have a view that everything in the world can be expressed as the ratio of two whole numbers. And that there is this thorny problem of, you know, you've got the theorem that bears Pythagoras' name. You know, if you've got a right-sided triangle, that the, you know, the hypotenuse is the square of the sum of the other two, the squares of the other two sides. There is no solution that is a ratio of the two. It's an irrational number. You can't express it as a ratio of these two whole numbers. And the story goes that the person who discovered this was thrown overboard by the Pythagoreans because it's such a, you know, it is such a just like it really rocks the foundation of their formulation of the world. Hey, Steve's nuts. Golden ratio is a little bit of a different thing, but I mean, obviously these are a bunch of math nerds, so we can talk about the golden ratio too, which comes up in so many wonderful things. Now, this is a level of dedication to an understanding of the world and specifically to mathematics. And of course, mathematics being tied very much to an intellectual, you know, an intellectual discipline. You know, generally, there's an old joke actually. I think it's like a an administrator at a university, and he's complaining to the physics department, like, why, you always demand so much money, like, you're always building like large hadron colliders, and it's never enough. You always have to build another thing to do your experiments. Like, why can't you be more like the mathematics department? We just need to pay them, we just need to get them pencils, paper, and the waste paper baskets. Actually, better still, why can't you be like the philosophy department? We just need the pencils and paper for them. So, obviously not very nice to the philosophers, but I still like that joke. Obviously I didn't tell it well, but like, you get the idea, right? It's maybe not a mistake that Platonism still will be appealing to mathematicians. Maybe not in like a very strict sense. Like, I don't really think somebody is going to sit down and like be a proper Platonist, today. Or at the very least, their idea of what a proper Platonist is probably going to be very different from what Plato maybe thought it would be. But the idea here is that this is definitely a consideration of things bigger than yourself, truths, things that merit very long, focused study, and an acceptance of the fact that maybe you're just not smart enough to get all of this. And without assigning any particular value judgments to the state of society today, it seems to me there are a number of trends that run quite counter to what seems to be driving this group in the Black Codex. We do value inclusion, and we do value the idea of sort of bringing everyone up, right? It's generally considered quite rude to tell someone, this is hard and you're never going to understand it, and so you should just give up. And by the way, I actually think that's largely a good thing. I think we should be encouraging more people to try difficult things, because we get more interesting things as a result of it, right? This is why I want to say, I do not mean this to be some like, hidden critique, in the guise of answering the question. But there's also the simple practical matter of where the priorities are. Like, it's hard to read long stuff today. Like, there's a lot of distractions, and there is not quite the same sort of priority to long, focused study. This is a problem in academia, right? That you have sort of a tenure clock, and while it may be valuable to develop this is something that James Heckman, the economist, was talking about. They had a really promising student who he was talking about developing a sort of a measure of education, which would be a really good sort of fundamental contribution to the study of education and sort of like being able to measure educational outcomes and such. And she agreed that it would actually be very important and valuable work, but that it was work that would not necessarily be rewarded and wouldn't necessarily get the kind of placement compared to doing a few other more popular styles of research. And there's a problem if our academies are focused so much on sort of the tenure track, and that, because of course the purpose of tenure is to be able to create interesting research. And if we're feeling that there is this short-term pressure to get a job and do well, and of course if your outside option is to go and work for Amazon because they're just hoovering up PhDs in economics as quickly as you can, arguably they probably have a better understanding of the economy than most governments do. You do sort of wonder, like, could you imagine a group like the Pythagoreans or something like that, thinking that we've got our priorities in place. So it's not just that we've got so many cybersecurity problems, which of course appeals to the espionage side of the Black Codex, but just simply the idea that we do seem to have a very short-term way of thinking, and that there's a lot of distractions, and that it is considered. I don't think we've quite lost the ability to say that it's a good thing that some people can read long and difficult books. But it is fair to say that it is harder today to read a long and difficult book than maybe it would have been sometime back. And I just kind of think the temperament to be someone alive today and operate in that. Thank you very much for the follow, Steve's Nuts. I think that there's something about that temperament that runs very counter to who the Black Codex, who these people that I'm playing are. Hopefully that answers your question. Cool facts. By the way, of course, like this is my silly little science fiction story, right? It's a grand strategy game which is focused on conquest. So if you don't like my answers, obviously, like take the idea and run with it, right? This is one of the things that's kind of funny about fun about not like filling in all of the details in advance, is that you give people, like, it's the old trick about, with horror movies, right? If you leave enough for the audience, I didn't unpause, I'm an idiot. If you leave enough space for people to imagine their own stuff, if you leave enough space for people to fill in the details, imagine the scarier monster, then that generally you wind up with better outcomes. People are more satisfied, and like nobody really cares that the show's Bible wasn't followed. I tend to find that a really satisfying way of working. We no longer see any reason to keep you locked out of our territory. Our borders are open to you again. I don't think I actually read that. And the fleet order canceled. I think we're probably going to have to retreat from Wistral, so we lose the influence. Hopefully this upgrade finishes soon, and then we can properly defend Mesa. Oh, that reminds me. Where are we with our 4, 8, 13, 20, 4, 8, 13, 5 more Corvettes. By the way, Fibonacci's, obviously the Fibonacci numbers are not the golden ratio, but there's a fun proof about the Fibonacci numbers that I kind of like. If you guys really like the math stuff, I can share it because it's like one of my favorite proofs. I might need a minute to like recall it though and work it out for myself. But I'm not going to turn this into Math Club.
Our ships have been improved.
Unless you want me to turn it into Math Club. Okay, so this is my main fleet, 25k, still not enough to take on the Great Khan on its own. But we are able to defend our territory a little bit better.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
Alright, well, I do actually want to upgrade for these advanced afterburners because that'll help me chase the Khan. This improved version of standard afterburners provide an even greater boost to ship's combat speed. I guess I said I was going to do the Ripper autocannons when I originally had the option for... Oh, this is funny. We're actually going to leapfrog the kinetic battery, but that's fine. So at this point, I just want to get rid of the Menace. So everybody who is available will go after these guys. Obviously, every system that I lose like this is more influence that I need to give up. Okay, the Vitresis Hive is rivaling the Zaxoid Stellar Confederation. Now, we currently do not have a defensive pact. This could get very interesting very soon. Because if the Vitresis goes to war with the Zaxoids, like, I don't exactly want... yeah, this is such a tough one. Like, I kind of want to be on the side of the Zaxoid so that we can nibble away at the Vitresis. But if the Zaxoid can't actually defend themselves, I don't want to go to war with a great power. Okay, so my usual sort of shake and bake colony, we give them a city district for the basic workers. We give them a gene clinic because we grow slowly. And then we get a temple because I like unity. And then we'll think about the rest of that at another point. Now, we don't need to bring the Decini Starfleet for the next sort of batch of actions. Oh, please tell me that this... Nope, stay put, you fool. I don't want to throw away... Yeah, we lost it. How close are the... Ugh! It's not worth fighting for. We've allowed you to move up freely in our territory for too long. Today we draw the line. Fair enough. I'm assuming they're mad about the fact that I'm on good terms with their new rival. Okay, so we're targeting the right one. Okay, Vexus has finished terraforming, so we will pretty much auto-colonize every time that happens. I can never remember which one I want to put on the planet, so Conservationist is cool and all, but... Actually, I think they're focusing on the wrong group. We should probably... We have ore, rich... No, we're not interested. Okay, so I'm assuming they're going through the wormhole, which means there's nothing I can do to follow them. In the meantime, we can start building star bases, and I think, as I said before, like, the plan here now is going to be to have a permanent fleet presence in Maisa. I can afford it, and I just don't see how there's any other option. Also, I'm rolling in the dough again, so let's terraform. In this case, I'm pretty much making every world that I have look the same. Oh, didn't have as much money as I thought. Wow, we lost another one. That's a shame. Okay, we are still going to slouch on to Bethlehem as far as the Taiga system is concerned. We'll maybe move a little slower. We can get to the Shroud, so let's have a chat. Reach into the Shroud. For reasons we cannot fathom, we have been drawn to this corner of the Shroud. Why? So, boon increased lifespans. If successful, the energies of the Shroud will be channeled into a powerful boon that has a positive effect on our entire empire. We could get a medium probability of better evasion and low chance of enhanced happiness. And in this case, I kind of like doing the high probabilities. Ah, we got a curse. Powerful psychic backlash is bounced back through our conduit with the Shroud and into the communal psionic link that is shared between all Emetherians. For some reason, this has had a detrimental effect on the birth rates throughout the Black Codex. This has affected members of races without any inherent psionic ability. So a 30% reduction to the growth speed. What is my profession, if you don't mind me asking? Do you use a lot of math? I'm an economist, so yes. But I also did, when I was in studies, I did a class in classics. I've actually always really enjoyed ancient philosophy, not limited to ancient philosophy. I like Ovid, I like Aeschylus, I like, ancient plays, Iliad, Odyssey, that sort of stuff. And I got to be a research assistant in classics. But that particular professor was very much focused on philosophers. I took a class with him on sort of the pre-Socratics as well as Hellenistic philosophers, so sort of before Plato and after Plato is not a bad way of looking at it. But the real main motivation behind all the math talk right now has actually just been because the big influence for this is some of the ideas sort of present in Philip K. Dick's writings, the author behind the name for the patch, the Dick patch. and which I realize Uncle Cranky's given a bit of a giggle to that, almost certainly. Probably not just Uncle Cranky, but I there's one person I know who will giggle at that for sure, and who can blame them, right? But yeah, it's just mostly I thought the Pythagoreans were an interesting model to put this behind, and of course, even somebody like Plato is somebody who is very invested in mathematics and the study of it, and particularly the trying to think of the right way to phrase it, but the way of looking at the world that sort of stems from considering those kinds of things. And so, you know, that's sort of what's been driving a lot of this playthrough. But yeah, I do. I mean, so here's the tricky thing. I do use a lot of math in my profession, but I am not very good at math, if you can believe that. Like I can get by. Like if there were to be someone here who was like, oh, you know, I didn't really do good at grade 10 math. Can you help me out with my homework? Complete. I'd probably be able to like crash land it, let's say. But actually, you know what? I'm going to change my priorities here a little bit. I'm going to build the starbase first, because then I can upgrade the starbase first, or right away. But you know, I definitely think there's a lot of stuff that I could get a lot better at. But it's definitely hard. Like, I think people can have opinions on the economy, like that's fine, without mathematics. But if you want to do good economics, and if you want to feel like you've really founded your results on firm foundations, you probably want to be you probably want to be expressing them mathematically, and you want to be comfortable with that notation. Doesn't mean you have to be good at it. It just means that you need to, you know, you really need to take the time and think carefully through it. Evolving artificial intellects are opening the door to the possibility for true synthetic sapience. So auto-research technology seems to be something new. They're really just taking more and more of the game away from me. Okay, gateway travel. Again, we haven't had the L gate. I'm wondering if it's even present in this one. There's so many tempting techs for me to take. I think I'm going to go for the 0-point reactor just because the extra power seems really nice. But I do so with a little trepidation. Also, I have no idea, but I'm seeing Steve's Nuts question now. I'm just thinking of the movie 300. It's like, System Jock, what is your profession? I'm a potter. You, what is your profession? Painter. Spartans, what is your profession? I don't think I'll go into it here. I have some ideas about how that movie could have been significantly better. It's not bad, but pretty sure most of you have seen it. So, thieves. After a recent visit of the Racket Industrial Fleet to Iblira Prime, it has been noticed that a number of resources are missing from the Central Reserve. It is suspected that the Racket Industrial Fleet somehow made off with them. Fortunately, it's only 200 credits, so I'm not too upset about it. Now, the way that this is going to work, so the problem that I have is that right now the Marauders have been sort of jumping through Wezin on these little raids. Now, my original intention was to actually take Wezin for myself, but what's happening is I am spending so much time chasing them down, and it takes me so long to move into these areas that I want to defend, that I'm actually going to sort of permanently keep a high-quality fleet stationed there. Now, right now, they're going to be on rotating upgrades. But the eventual plan will be to have like a shipyard in my set, even just temporarily until we deal with the crisis. Because the biggest thing that I want, if I can, is to be able to wipe out the... Wait a minute. Okay, they're all doing research. Or sorry, they're not all doing research, but... Please tell me Okay, we got 1-1 Wentworth. If I don't have one on the capital, I'm gonna just... I don't. Oh, that's frustrating. Okay, I messed up somewhere in my... on my science ships. So let's take... Well, there's two things I'm going to do. One, we're going to research this project, and then following that, we're going to head back to Kara and assist research on Quantos. Sorry about that. I realized not as much has happened on this playthrough as I was kind of wanting to. I wanted to be kind of like on time in terms of my finishing, but I might run a little bit later to see if we can force a confrontation. Again, the biggest problem that I've been running into here is that the Khan has got a very fast ship.
Construction complete.
And unfortunately, I just haven't been able to seal the deal. Even if it would mean that we take a semi-disadvantageous fight, I haven't even been able to pin them down for that. So we'll have a starport here. I may not build it in my ideal form, but right now we're rebuilding our borders. And then following that, I will eventually I want to go on a proper hunt for the Khan. But I have some other priorities too, right? Like being able to colonize these planets. I guess the biggest thing that I need to hope for is that the
spirits have granted us new wisdom.
The other species don't take out the Khan first. All right, amateurs talk about tactics, professionals study logistics. By ensuring our fleets are regularly and efficiently supplied, we can increase the number of vessels we can effectively support. So, next, tech. I usually tend to go for the cheaper stuff just because I get a draw from the deck right away, unless it's something that really leaps out to me as like an obviously good one. Gene modification is very tempting, but it will take up a lot of my resources in order to be able to get the transition. Leader enhancement. Actually, you know what? Selected lineages is not a bad idea here, so careful reproductive planning should be incentivized lest we waste valuable genetic legacies. So this appeals to me a little bit more than gene modification points because it doesn't cost me the same in order to make the change. On top of that, the 50% leader cost isn't actually that bad. Like, it costs me energy, which I already have lots of. So it seems to me like now is a good time for me to start start taking on those costs. Also, I may want to start thinking about building a third fleet. So I'd love to have Titans. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to build Titans yet. My envoy has died. How would the Codex react if they found out the leader was selling all of the secrets to other empires? Oh man, that would be... I would have to say, that to me would almost sort of be like the... I don't know, like the Pope converting to Islam or something. Because that is such a fundamental... That is just such a fundamental... I mean, it couldn't... I'd have to say something even stronger than that. Like, maybe the Pope converting to, some, a worship of, Mithras or something like that. Although I guess even that would have been, around during Christian time. But, just this idea of something... Because, the thing, at least here in the case, if you're doing the comparison with Islam, is, you have, a monotheism that you're converting to. Whereas, if you're taking some kind of a, a deity out of a pantheon, the idea here of the personal benefit and the refinement that comes through the studying of and communication of, or sorry, the studying and keeping of secrets, and sort of plumbing the the depths of this knowledge. So the number of violations of what that would be. So first of all, selling, to do it for such a trivial amount, like something as trivial as money is unthinkable. To have someone get not just give it up, but give it up so cheaply, would just raise the question in terms of how they ever got into the place in the first place. So I suppose wouldn't end well for them. I have a feeling that probably it would what would be interesting is if you have this idea of like some kind of a schism where there is enough appreciation of the institutions where you respect the person at the top, but the action that they would take would just be so counter to this idea, right? And again, it's almost, I suppose you could almost make the comparison to something like alchemy, right? Where you have this idea that it's not just, turning, and obviously not alchemy, please don't, one thing that I think I run into the problem with is it's cool to read this stuff. It's like reading D&D manuals, but I also know that some people get really invested in the fact that I talk about this stuff and that it comes off that I'm either really well read on esoteric topics and things like that. I'm actually really not, and I run the risk of disappointing people by going into some of this stuff. But from what I understand, the whole idea of alchemy is not just supposed to be about the transmutation of base metals into gold, but also the idea of this sort of refining process of the practitioner. And whether or not that's actually what was going on, I don't know. Obviously, Newton was into it, so it didn't stop intelligent people from practicing. But just the idea that this study has other benefits to it beyond just, the fact that you're very good at making codes. It would just suggest that this leader of effectively this religious order has apparently completely missed the point. And again, I suppose if you respect the institutions, then you would follow. But I suppose to this extent here, I would say that because the process is what matters, it is the understanding and the gaining your own understanding. I just don't see how you could have this leader get away with something like that and have people say, well, this is who the leader is, they're the leaders, so obviously they're right. Instead it would be, they have utterly betrayed all of our ideals and they are unworthy of following. And, they would have to sort out either what their punishment would be or how they determine a replacement or otherwise. But that in itself would be a crisis, and then that would likely cause a tremendous amount of effort in terms of finding the extent to which the secrets were breached. All right, tech-wise, so I can boost my command limits, or I'm going to do the great game because I'm going to be investing a lot in. I'm going to be investing a lot in my space sports. So, the great game. As we continue to expand, other empires will inevitably challenge our claims, as we would theirs. We are locked into a great game of resources and territory. It is nothing less than our duty to come out on top. So, star-based damage up 20%. We could have used that earlier. Defense platform build cost and star-based upgrade cost reduced by 33%. That is a particularly big one for me. By the way, I'm really encouraged that you're all invested enough in my silly little empire to ask all these interesting questions. Because, like I said, I haven't really thought about this sort of stuff. It's I'm not going to suggest that people who sit down and like fully work out their worlds are doing something wrong. It's just that seems like a lot of work, and I always like having to I always like having a little something to put myself into, and so it's kind of neat to sort of be forced to think a bit about how how this species works in certain scenarios.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
I'd put it to you this way. Cool facts. To answer your previous question, I would say that it hasn't happened in the past, might be the other one. But of course you asked what would happen. So do I play tall or wide? So personally, I never have a good answer to this question, and I have some feelings about tall versus wide in strategy in general. So I tend to think that this is a sign of the game sort of failing. Failings may be too strong to say, but I have a feeling that it is a marker that perhaps the game isn't hitting its ideal. So I think if a strategy game pushes you to adopt one particular approach over another one, right? So do you want to build up or do you want to build out? It sort of... Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not a game designer, right? So I might just be talking nonsense. But I sort of feel like it means that the game has sort of failed to convince you of the value of taking a viable path. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to, like, obviously, as an economist, I know the advantages of comparative advantage. Sometimes you want to specialize on certain things rather than others. But, like, I'll use Civilization as my model. I feel like in Civilization, and I know there are people who sort of like to talk about playing tall and playing wide in Civilization, but I generally think that in Civilization, and particularly in Civilization 6, that in the ideal playthrough, you are offered enough interesting choices in terms of how to improve your cities, as well as a number of interesting strategic choices in terms of how many and where you found your cities. And I don't necessarily see there being a trade-off between the number of cities as opposed to the density of the buildings inside of them. Now, by necessity, I would probably say that what I'm doing right now is playing very wide, because I sort of thought one way that I could overcome my birth problems would be to have a very large number of systems, each of which are having their own birth rates. And so, as you can see, there's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of colonies being spawned up, and I've effectively ignored my Empire Sprawl. Although we have closed that gap since the start. It probably will stop shrinking for a little while because I haven't put enough investment in my bureaucratic centers, but we'll take care of that. Don't worry. I really need to get my science back in order, though. But I don't know. Like, for me, I never have a good answer for it, just because I kind of think that I don't really conceive of strategy games along those terms. Like, I know they're terms that other people use, but they're ones that I sometimes struggle with a little bit, because I'm always wondering if there's just something that I'm missing in terms of the way that people talk about the games. So I think probably, if I was honest, like, probably what people would see this as playing as is a wide play. But for the most part, I don't always think in those terms. Although, of course, I will also acknowledge, like, Stellaris has a single planet origin, and I know at least Civ 5 had, like, a single city civilization. So I'm very much talking my book here, not, like, talking... I don't think the designers would share my opinions on that, let's say. These upgraded rotary autocannons feature improved tracking and fire control systems. This allows them to maintain an even higher rate of fire. Okay. I'm back to the problem of not knowing what I want to do with my... Wait. How is that even possible? We have more points in autonomous mining drones than it's actually possible to research. All right.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
Fleets of autonomous drones equipped with mining beams are deployed to quickly and efficiently gather nearby minerals. Impulse thruster. Okay. It's a long one. It's the most expensive tech. But I do need speed. This is kind of me obsessing with not having caught the Khan. But, I mean, that problem's not going to solve itself, right? Whoa! All right. Ah, yes. Okay. This is back when we thought that we had a Khan fight right ahead of us, so...
Our ships have been improved.
Okay, are these guys ready to fight, or do I need to upgrade them again? Yep, upgrade them again, so we'll throw them back into the pile. I want to preserve my influence until I've restored my old borders, and then we'll get the construction ship moving back to the Taiga system. Normally, grand strategy 4X games need a little bit of both, and you're correct. If you find yourself needing to choose one over the other, then that leads to a strong argument about balancing issues within the game. Yeah, I should also say, too, like, if I sound a little cagey in terms of talking about balance issues, it's because I've been a very fond follower of Industries of Titan, which was released on Steam last week. And there was a user... So one thing I need to recognize as a fan of that game is that I don't want to suggest that I'm fawning, but I think most of you who follow the channel will know that I am very fond not just of Industries of Titan, but I'm very fond of the developer behind Industries of Titan. Did I forget to put someone in fact? No, it looks like it's on its way. And let's buy a slave. So one thing I need to appreciate as a fan of the game is that, you know, I might really like it, and I might find it a little frustrating sometimes to see, oh, hang on, that's a specialist. I didn't even think about where I was. Oh, that's frustrating. Okay, I'm going to have to resettle them. Let's find one of my industrial centers. No, that's stupid. Put them on Wentwork so they can start working, so they can start working a research lab. Hey, Night Valian. How you doing, guys? For those of you who don't know Night Valian, he is my usual go-to late-night streamer. He is based in Brazil. He's got a nice soft voice and has currently been playing Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I need to say is a very unrealistic game. But that notwithstanding, Night Valian makes it look fun. So he's somebody I can't really say he's just starting out now. He's been around for a while, and I've been delighted to see a number of you hanging out in his channel and being just kind of good ambassadors of my stuff. Obviously, people like me more if I can drive some traffic towards their channel. But more importantly, I'm really happy that I've actually noticed a few of you are like really getting into his streams, and it might actually be, I don't want to say like a better fit in the sense that I'm like, oh no, you're leaving me, but like I'm really happy to see that like it really does seem like he's sort of finding his niche or sort of finding his voice, let's say, and that it's something that you're getting into. So I really appreciate the fact that it's clear that people have actually been following that recommendation and checking him out. Yeah, I was gonna say he's not limited to games like Yakuza. I found him through Kit Fox Games' Lucifer Within Us, which is an indie sort of detective game. And just overall, he's a really friendly guy who I like talking about. I'll answer your interesting crisis cool facts, but I feel like I need to address what Steve's Nuts was saying vis-a-vis my experience with Industries of Titan. So I need to appreciate that. Like, I'm a very big fan of that game. Looks like we're also going to defeat the Vitresis Hive and the Senate on the repeal buzzword standardization, so that's a nice one. Maybe let me just double check that isn't having some secondary effect, because they seem to be supporting the removal, and I'm a little worried that maybe I'm missing something here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that worried about the bureaucrat upkeep, so I might have been before, but I'm not anymore. But yeah, so the thing is that like I'm really fond of it, and I appreciate that if people don't say negative things about the game, it's not necessarily going to get any better. And I want the game to be better. I want the game to be something that lots of people will want to play and enjoy, and talk about. I want brace yourself to keep making good games that I enjoy playing. So I'm not gonna like be rushing to the defense of Milady to and getting really upset with people for speaking ill of the game. On the other hand, I remember one comment in particular which was related to the balance of the game. And I think one of the things that always frustrates me in balance conversations, particularly for single-player games, is that there seems to be this idea that if you just like take all of the parameters of the game and you scrape them across like whatever unit the game uses, so like across tiles or hexes or whatever it is, that somehow the game is going to be better. There's some magic by making all of the numbers equal out. And I mean, just to a certain extent, it makes me say, is like, do you not think the developers have calculators? Like, these guys have been at this for a while, right? Like, presumably there's something else that they're optimizing for. And like, I think of a game like Darkest Dungeon. Like, Darkest Dungeon arguably has some classes that are better than others in the sense of like getting what you normally want from the game. So like, it's really hard to say that the Antiquarian is really someone you just gotta have in your party, but they also happen to be really good for getting lots of valuables. So they have a role to play, but it's maybe not a role that you'd associate with the most important part of a dungeon crawler. And I think that does not prevent the game from being interesting. I mean, the success of Darkest Dungeon requires no elaboration, to be completely frank. Let's stick them on Gribben. Nope, that's another specialist. What's going on here? I'm paying twice for all of my slaves. All right, well, I'll just stick the next one on Wentwork then. So that sort of stuff kind of bugged me, and that's why I'm always very hesitant to talk specifically about balance stuff, because I sometimes appreciate that there is a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in a game that maybe I'm not privy to. As it turns out, I did follow up on that individual. I didn't think they were being very respectful in the Discord, but I wanted to try and hear them out and offer why I didn't agree with their point of view. But they seem to be like a Stellaris modder, so it's not to say that they're completely, uninitiated with design choices themselves. I just didn't really think their vision for Industries of Titan was all that convincing, if I'm completely honest. But yeah, I mean, with my hesitation aside, I really do agree with what you said there, Steesnut, that basically if the game hasn't given you enough to think about, if you are always going to one particular solution, then it may be a signal of how the developers had one idea in mind and it's you had another. So like in the case of Stellaris, right, I make tons of suboptimal choices because I'm telling an interesting interesting to me sci-fi story. On the Cultist Simulator stuff, Cultist Simulator's by the same writer who did the Horizon Signal, for those of you not familiar with that title. Well, they're opening the borders again. We no longer see any reason to keep you locked out of our territory. Our borders are open to you again. You know, the videos still get comments like, you know, just move your headquarters. Like, why are you worrying about it? It's like, because I don't want to do, like, the answer to that is always because I don't want to do it this way. You know, I want to do it. I think the story is more interesting if I do this other thing that I also have an option for. It's Demonoxious. Thank you very much for the follow. You know, it's and again, like, everybody's gonna have their own different way of approaching stuff, but you know, I don't know, I like reading, I like radio plays, I like things that allow me to express my imagination. And how many strategy games do you really get to say that you got to exercise your imagination a little bit? That's one thing that I think is one of Stellaris' great strengths. And I mean, I say that as somebody who still loves Civ immensely. You know, Civ was actually the thing that gave me interest in things that are tied to my academic interests. Civ didn't get me into econ. Civ definitely gave me an appreciation for the world of ideas and getting
construction complete.
Getting interested in things.
The spirits have granted us new wisdom.
You know, like, there's only so many times you can, like, read about see a hoplite in the game like Civ, and then not, like, go to the Civilopedia to find out what a hoplite was. And it's fun, like, to be able to kind of talk about the alternate history that you do in a game like Civilization is fun in its own way. But obviously, science fiction is just such a great genre for being able to talk about ideas and being able to, you know, communicate part of yourself, right? Like, being able to talk about stuff that matters to you, and being able to talk about it in that coded language that sci-fi authors are so good at using, to be able to just sort of move things away from the present day worries and to be able to explore them in a sort of a fantastic world, is really something that leads to some good writing. And it's neat that Stellaris really embraced that part of science fiction by giving you the canvas. Have I played EU4? I have. I had a little difficulty playing it on stream because the last time I did it on stream, another streamer kind of came in and, like, really wanted to tell me how to play the game, and then, like, at the end of the broadcast basically announced that they were going live and, like, everybody could come and follow them. Like, it was a, you know, I shouldn't paint the EU community all, like, with one brush, right? But I tend to play EU4 quite more privately than I do on stream. And the funny thing is because I'm just so interested in the Dutch Republic, I almost always play the game as Holland. Like, I'm trying to remember the last time I've played as something other than Holland, and I genuinely cannot remember the last time that I've played a non-Holland start. So just like the Dutch. I'm not Dutch, I'm Canadian. The Dutch are our best friends for sure. But, you know, I really like Holland, and that is such a weird, like, I don't know anybody else who plays EU4 and is like, oh yes, the Holland experience is truly the essence of Europa Universalis. Oh yeah, Demonoxious. Like, I don't think anybody really feels like they're a master of EU4. There's so much to learn in that game, but I really think it's a well done one. Oh, that's a neat one. I have a viewer, I think they still watch, but CPO Williams, who really kindly, if you guys want to know somebody who really helped out the channel early on, because I was in grad school when I was streaming, and I definitely could not afford, like, the Paradox DLCs all the time. CPO Williams really did a incredibly nice thing to the stream for basically keeping me in Crusader King DLC in over the course, and that's something I never want to take for granted. Like, no matter how much time went by, because it's something that ultimately sort of let me build my channel, right? Even if I don't do a lot of Crusader Kings anymore, like, it's something that I think deserves the respect and the mention. But I remember I think he wanted to play Sengoku. I don't know if he ever really got around to it, but I think that was, I don't know if he played that in Europa Universalis 4, but I suspect you two probably have quite a bit in common. I've actually not done a lot of the Japanese starts. I did one China, and I learned that China is actually very difficult. So I've not gone back since, but I should probably give it another shot. Careful reproductive planning should be incentivized lest we waste valuable genetic legacies. All right, where are we back here? And I know I still need to answer your question about endgame crises cool facts, because I didn't really think about it. I mean, one interesting way. So this is where, you know, having the blank canvas and having the you know, having some things unresolved. This is where it can be interesting. So there's the idea that we are potentially the intelligence services of a former great empire, or a like we potentially were a fallen empire ourselves. So the war in heaven is a really indirect way of going into like attacking that, because of course it could be the decision, like it's the realization that in fact you are in fact the long lost component of this empire, and this empire is ready to take its place on the stage, and the decision as to whether or not you want to retain your independence or whether you recognize your origins and return to the fold, I think has that's ripe for drama, right? And I know the war in heaven is not necessarily one that people would associate with, like, interesting endgame events, and yet I think that there's enough room in sort of the world I've made for this species that I think that has some interesting possibilities. Sorry, I'm just going to take a second here. I suppose there's like the end of cycle, because of course we're spending some time in the Shroud, but I don't know if I want to quite count that in the same. I think we'll do collective self just so we can draw from the deck again. Sorry, I'm losing track of the crises again. I don't know. War in Heaven, I'm warming up just because of the possibilities of I'm opening, like, there's the possibilities in terms of the backstory for them. And then I suppose, depending on how you would want to think about the extra-dimensional invaders, you could go kind of so let's just go Lovecraftian on it, right? Like, there's the whole idea of wanting to try and understand the world and just think of things, and then suddenly realizing that, the universe is at best indifferent and in fact probably hates you. And to just sort of realize that, in fact, all of this stuff that you've been studying is actually something that wants to take all of your stuff. Sir, the peasants are singing again? What did I miss, Night Valian? I don't think I get the reference. Rust? What rust? Oh, that rust. Just scrape it off. Scrape, scrape, scrape. And good as new. What can you offer us? I said no before. Move along. Okay, fair enough. Sorry. I probably shouldn't have expanded out to that other territory. It's taken a while for me to get back to the level of influence I want. Also, what are my construction ships up to? Because I thought I had one of them on my liquid metal. All right, well, it's going to take us a while to get the borders back, so let's build the station, and then we can move back, and we're at our cap for... I should really try and become the owner of the galactic market again.
We are spreading our faith to a new world.
Oh yes, also, we should be terraforming more worlds. Eventually I will have more have more sectors. But for starters, we can at least turn all of these things into slightly more habitable planets. All right, resolution was defeated. The Senate has voted on and failed the resolution repeal buzzword standardizations. So again, I might want to do something like relocate the galactic market. Can I even? There's definitely a way you can relocate this thing. I don't have the influence for it, and I want to use it to expand my... Do you dabble with any stats Python pandas? Are you speaking another language? No, I'm a huge Python fan. There's a bunch of I will say, cultists in my current workplace, and I think it is causing us to miss out on a lot of very good opportunities to use better tools. Obviously... The work is what matters, right? Like, I don't want to be too militant about it. There are people who do very good work in R, and, all due respect and power to them. But I am very excited in Python. In fact, I had... so on top of the work, my job title is in fact economist, right? I'm lucky enough that I did find work which was in fact related to my major. But on top of that, actually, this is a wonderful little opportunity for self-promotion, so I apologize, but let's do Kit Fox Games. Where are you? So I wish I had more to show you on this front. I've actually been doing quite a bit of other work, but this article that I did for what in God's name is that link? Sorry. I think Medium's trying to do silly things. All of that was done in pandas. That's an article that I did for Kit Fox, who, if you've not heard of them, have done some wonderful independent games. They developed Shattered Planet, Moon Hunters, Lucifer Within Us. They are publishing Paparazzi, Mondo Museum. They published 6 Ages, which is the sequel to King of Dragon Pass, and a little game that I'm sure some of you may know, Dwarf Fortress. They're the ones who are publishing that. Really cool indie studio. Probably a game which I'm hoping makes them pots of money will be Boyfriend Dungeon. But they very kindly gave me their data to look at, and so all of that was run in pandas. I can say that other developers reached out as a result of that work. I like to respect the fact that not everybody wants to have their sales data just out in the open like that, and so I am working on finding out what I can share and when. But I have definitely been doing a lot of work, and all of my independent work, I'm too cheap to buy stata. I'm too cheap to to pay for a license for something, and so I live in the Python scientific computing stack. I'm not very good at it, but I can I get my stuff done in it. Why do you ask, Steve's Nuts? Are you a fan, or are you looking to get into it? Do you want to know why your filters weren't working properly? Because I probably suck at that. But the shroud is quiet today. Reach into the shroud. And yeah, sorry. I don't know if that was a good answer, Cool Facts, but I actually think the War in Heaven is the most interesting lore-wise, because it raises an interesting question about the origins of the Black Codex. The graphical version of Dwarf Fortress looks awesome. I cannot wait for it. What a shame they haven't given us a release date, huh? The concept of time as we know it is alien to this part of the Shroud. What can seem like centuries here may equal... Oh! Also, quick word, because I owe this person a big thank you. Victoria Trent. So Tanya Short, captain of Kit Fox Games, has been absolutely wonderful and a really great resource for advice, and has allowed me to Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I have like no idea what you do. Um, but like this is the thing, right? I know I have a very narrow view of computing. Like I am fascinated by people who are very good at what they do. But the thing is that like I have always used the computer as a way of getting the stuff that I need to do faster, more effectively, more reliably. And so like if I do a web scraping thing, it's like Kleenex, right? I use it once and I throw it away. I'm really bad at developing proper like infrastructure and like don't get me wrong, like if it's something I'm going to use over and over again, I'll take the time to build it right. But I tend to want to get a result. I want to get some research results, and I do the work, and I wail and gnash my teeth and talk about what a bad programmer I am every time I take a look at my code. But the thing is that I can optimize for code or I can optimize for insight, and often I need to optimize for insight because that is what people want me to do, right? If you say I'm hiring an economist, generally you expect there to be some sort of research output. And if you want good code, then you say I'm going to hire a programmer. So I defer to the experts on a lot of this stuff. But honestly, like I'm a huge Python fan. I like it. I've learned other stuff. So I actually also really like Lisp. Don't ask how I know it, but like if people ask me, I can't afford Stata. I want to do empirical work. What's this open source tool you'd recommend? My answer would always be Python. The automation and cybersecurity within the cloud. That's very cool. Yeah. Have you played, this is another Canadian game, have you played a game called Night Team 4? Which is an ARG, basically. Very heavy on cybersecurity. I'm sure as a practitioner, you would find it quite an oversimplification of what you do. But I also happen to know that for that game, there are actually quite a few people in that field who still quite like it. Because they just think they do it in an interesting way. And that is by a Montreal developer called Allison Smith. And the reason I mentioned them is because if you liked some of the like augmented reality stuff that was at PDXCon this year, it was in fact Allison Smith that did it. So there is in fact, like, I'm not just going off on these tangents because I like going off on tangents. I do like that. But a lot of the stuff actually winds up relating back to Paradox in weird and interesting ways. So, and I also mention it because we've got the Steam sale going on. So if you don't know about KitFox, check out their stuff. That is one thing that's not related to Stellaris. Stellaris itself, of course, is on sale. Allison Smith did the augmented reality stuff for Paradox, so you can check out their games, The Black Watchman and Night Team 4. They've also got a couple of other ones like Aniro The Dream World, but I think Night Team 4 is the one that is the newest, and I think probably the one that really I connected to the best. And then, of course, the author of the Horizon Signal has Cultist Simulator, which I think is on sale. It was on sale recently, at least. But I think those are all my credits. Right, the concept of time as we know it is alien in this part of the Shroud. What can seem like centuries here may equal mere hours or even minutes in the real world. If one knows where to look, it is even possible to glimpse into the future. Precognition is one of the surest paths to madness for a telepath, so we must use caution. So we can meditate here for a moment. Oh man, I don't know what's going to happen, but of course we have to do it. Precognition interface. A limited precognitive connection to the Shroud can be maintained without risking insanity, but the massive influx of probability data is too overwhelming to be of much practical use. Still, if a digital interface could be devised to interpret this data, it could potentially be applied to improve the performance of our starship's combat computers. Cool. Let me just say, so I regret that we didn't have any big game moments in here. I was really thinking we would be able to finally face off against the Khan, and unfortunately their ship's just too fast for me still. But one thing I really do appreciate is there have been a lot of interesting people who have come by. Now, okay, don't like that. I don't mean to disrespect the people who normally hang out, right? You are all interesting, and I like hanging out with you. But it's actually been, I've been really, excuse me, I've been really, it's been really neat to just kind of some of the new faces that have been coming by, just the questions that you've all been asking tonight, and of course regulars as well. The questions I've been loving, but I'm getting to know a few of you a bit better, and it's, you all have vast and rich lives. I'm feeling a slight inferiority complex. All right, so the Vitresis Hive got a Leviathan before we did. Again, we are living under the specter of the Khan showing up to take my territory, so I don't think there's a whole lot that I can do about that. But we'll do our best not to fall too far behind. Okay, so we've got something showing up on Fact. Got 3 colony ships on the way, so maybe we'll just wait until the colonies have been... Well, made a magical guessing computer. My life is cool too. Yeah, not too many people know about that though, Night Valians. Let's just keep that under our hat for now.
Construction
that's
complete.
Probably going to be something that I can publish, but I think it would be better for me to get a proper sign off on talking about that. No, I am fascinated by the fact, I don't know if Elgates just didn't show up in this map. No, wait, there's one right here. So yeah, nothing's happened with the L cluster yet. The important thing to remember, I knew of these people eventually. So like early-ish in the playthrough, we eventually, like the Fallen Empire was the first one we found. The Vitresis Hive and the Zaxxoid Stellar Confederation were the first 2 species that I ran into. But like, I pretty much had all of this to myself, and I had no knowledge of anything else existing in the galaxy. Like, this has been a pretty weird map for me. I mean, it's the consequence of me randomizing all the starting parameters. Like, sometimes you're just going to wind up with an odd batch, but like, I just wanted to do a slightly smaller map so I could get through things a bit faster, and the consequence here has just been this incredibly weird galaxy where I was sort of given my own neighborhood forever, and I didn't know about Elgates or the Marauders at the start. Yeah, that's fair, Steve's nuts. The funny thing is that I've learned how many developers I wind up knowing. Like, this is one of the things, like, just the people I kind of wind up having these weird, not weird, but like these unexpected social ties with. Eventually I just kind of realized, like, oh yeah, I guess I know a couple of game developers. It's really funny because when people talk to them, right, like, so many people are going to say, it's like, oh man, like, how did you get into video games, right? Like, that's the coolest job ever. Like, you know, that's got to be something that everybody wants to do, and, you know, only the elite few go into it. And like, the thing that's so funny is almost every single one of them that I hear from, it's like you say, we all have a bit of imposter syndrome. Like, they're always talking about how all of their other coworkers are like the best in the industry, and they have no idea what they're doing there. So, wait, that's a randomized one? I had no idea that
Our ships have been improved.
Oh god, I only thought that they changed the like number of species. I didn't know it changed the crisis stuff. Oh my god. So this is either going to be the most anticlimactic ending, or it's going to be hell on earth. All right, well, gives me a good reason to pick up the pace, I suppose. Let's fill in the gap at Dodona. Nah, you know what? Redamon first. I gotta pay attention to those menus a little bit more often, I think. Okay, so let's just... So for those of you who don't know what I did Control-Shift. So I still, like, I get this every once in a while where people are like, you can do it faster if you use the hotkeys or whatever, or like the thing for me is that I have gotten in the habit of like doing the right click because it's one of the best ways I can communicate my actions without saying out loud. And now I'm exploring this system, and now I'm moving to this system. But the one thing that I can't communicate is when I'm pushing alternative buttons. So I think most people know in games that you can shift click to queue up orders. What people don't always know, and I know I've mentioned this like 4 or 5 times on this playthrough, so for those of you who've been following on the VODs and that, I'm sorry. I know this is probably getting a bit tedious. But you can, in fact... you can actually get you can put something to the top of the queue. So instead of redoing your entire queue, if you do Control-Shift and then your action, you'll actually put it up at the top. So the programmers on Twitch here are really good and make you feel... Oh, I did not know that you work for Twitch. That's really cool. There's this one guy named Casey who's making a game, Handmade Hero, completely from scratch. Check out his YouTube. The dude is probably one of the smartest people you've ever heard. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. And actually, on that note, a friend of mine, Brian on the Rocks on Twitch, actually, you can give him a quick shout out. Good lord. So he is a game developer at Respawn, does Apex Legends and talks about the development of it, but he's also been covering some games that he picked up over some demos of games that he did during the Steam Next
the spirits have granted us
event.
new wisdom.
And I recommended a local game to him called Radio Viscera because it was the first time I went to the local game dev community. There's a local game dev collective called Dirty Rectangles, and that was the first game shown. It's by a developer named Owen Deary, and he's made his own engine. It's a really good looking game. I'll go so far as to say there are parts of it that don't quite work for me, and I suspect probably will be changed later on in the life of the game. But I know exactly what you're talking about when you see people who, like they're doing their own thing, and it's just like, I don't even have a frame of reference for understanding how cool what you've done is. And that's definitely one for me. Like, he knows a ton about shaders. Like I can remember a few presentations about geometry shaders, or even just simply like the fact that I actually got to ask him about this, I asked him, and like the thing is, he's always going to hear from people. It's like, oh, what Unity plugins are you using? And it's like, he's rolled his own. The thing that's so interesting to me about him was like, I asked him, I said, look, I know you get this question a lot, and I'm going to try and ask it in like the least annoying way possible. But I'm like, you got Unreal, you got Unity, you can even go for like, hippie engines like Godot. I say that because Valiant Cheese uses Godot. He did Hive Time, and it's wonderful. But like, and then you can go for like the arcane stuff. Ogre is a rendering engine. It's not a full-fledged game engine, but Rebel Galaxy Outlaw was made in that. Torque, Frozen Synapse, Frozen Cortex. Star Siege Tribes, for crying out loud, was made using what became Torque, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's true. I might be off on it. I said, like, you really you're spoiled for choice when it comes to game engines. So it's like, what is it about? And like the results speak for themselves. Like, his stuff looks great. And it was like, what is it about making the engine that like made you want to do that? Because it's like, obviously I believe he makes a living doing games. So like, obviously you want to make sure that you are using your time in a profitable way. Otherwise you don't eat. And he gave an interesting answer just in terms of being able to build tools that you are able to sort of control, and you're able to sort of do your expression with. And like, I thought of the analogy of old painters. So obviously nowadays, if you want to go and get paints, you just go to the art store and buy paint. But of course, for so much of history, so much of specifically of art history, part of being an artist has been mixing your own paints, mixing your own pigments, and some colors being more difficult than others. Azure being a particularly challenging color, apparently. And apparently some of Da Vinci's what made his work unique at the time was his ability to just render colors in a particular way that others could not seem to match. And so I was, this is the cool thing about getting involved in local dev scenes, right? Is that you're able to gain an appreciation for things that you don't necessarily think about. But that was sort of how I got to understand that motivation a little bit better, to sort of see it in the light of somebody wanting to, part of the process of creation is in fact making the tools that will create the work. And obviously that's, the thing that was cool about that for me was I was able to appreciate that in a way that like made total sense to me. It's okay. It's gonna sound weird that I said that, but like what I mean is that it rung true in the sense of like I now understand why this is something like why it would be a weird question to ask someone like that. Why are you, why aren't you just using, Unreal or whatever? Okay, I need to do some changes to the capital, so I'm okay leaving it as it. No, you know what? We'll make it a mining district. I don't really need the growth that I have. I do want this to grow. It seems to me to make as much sense to be able to boost up one of these buildings. So let's upgrade one of the research centers just so we continue to have population growth. But I don't need a gene clinic here anymore. So let's replace that. We don't have any special resources on the planet. So I think it's not my most exciting option. I mean, so I was thinking like, Psychor, well, we get some unity in crime, but if I did it, actually, let me just double check that. So if the Psychor, I know I don't have a stronghold. You know what? I should probably have a stronghold on my planets. I feel a little silly doing it, but... finding aspects of the self within the group is natural and inevitable. Eventually, those shared aspects must be valued higher than individual identities. Okay. It's expensive, but let's go for it. I mean, we didn't risk the shroud to ignore it. Okay, tell you what, guys. I am at about half an hour past my time, and I was hoping that I could get a little bit more done, but I also told myself that I would be working on... I told myself I'd be working on this job application because I probably have over an hour worth of work to do on it, and the deadline for it is basically midnight. So I am really, really cutting into my time. Oh, there is one thing I'm going to do, though. Let's resettle them to... What was my agri-world? Gribbon. So they can go farm. So I'm sorry that this was a little bit more of a building round on Stellaris. We kind of had a bunch of losses here, unfortunately. We lost some territory. We'll get it back. We weren't able to take out the Great Khan. What is nice about this, though, and one thing that doesn't make it a total loss, is that our navy is actually in much better shape than it was before. So we now have 2 full fleets. It's also going to be very easy to bolster these things with some extra, like once we get the fleet cap bonuses, we've got plenty of room inside of our naval capacity, and then we can also build more stations, which I will eventually get going on. But right now, the name of the game here is really going to be about getting rid of the mid-game crisis, the Great Khan. This has gone on long enough, let's say. Now, there's other things that'll happen. So, unfortunately, the Vitresis Hive has the defensive pact with them, so I'm not able to vassalize them, and I can't make federations. So eventually, I'm going to throw the galaxy into war, I think. But Right now, I'm just sort of doubling down on my effort to grow out my empire. But hey, Ed Baver, I'm so sorry. I'm actually just wrapping up for tonight, but I really appreciate you hanging out. And I will find somebody to host tonight, but I just want to do a quick recap of a few things that are going on the channel. So the one thing I'll be honest with you, like from a player point of view, I'm actually kind of happy that this was a slower run, because I needed to kind of get back into Black Codex mode. Oh, I will show you guys what I've done, like all of the previous species that I've done, because that was something I promised before. But Stellaris is going to be back every Monday again, unless I don't have unless I'm not streaming on Monday. I don't foresee any big events coming up that will keep me from streaming that. Obviously, Industries of Titan was an exception. Tomorrow's Oblivion episode, I'm probably going to put up a vodcast, and I'll probably just make it last week's episode. But a reminder: OBS crashed, and I was not able to recover the video file. That is unfortunately the risk you run when you use an MP4 container. So there will be no new Oblivion episode. I'll probably just still do the rerun, because I know not a lot of people saw last week's. But if you like watching the high definition ones, ultimately I did get a new episode recorded. That's in the can, but it is still processing on YouTube, so unfortunately I am not able to turn that into something that's good to look at. I'm going to be waiting a while on that, so my apologies in advance. For those of you who like the Brace Yourself game stuff, we did actually finish the last mission on Phantom Brigade, so while we will be returning to Phantom Brigade, I'm going to take the opportunity to spend a little more time in Industries of Titan and see if we can maybe beat the 10 rebel camp start, because that is really challenging, it turns out, on hard mode. And then finally Friday, we've been enjoying Cloudpunk, so I do have a Hollow Knight video that I got to record. I'm going to try and get a few more of the Hollow Knight videos done, because I made some decent progress on Grim the last time I did one. But I do have a lot of catch up to play first. So that's the plan for the oncoming week. Stellaris is going to still be a regular feature, so anytime between 7 and 8 is the usual start time, and I'll go for at least 3 hours. Tonight I would have liked to have gone longer, but I also would like to have better employment, so, you know, I'm not going to do that if I don't do my job app on time. So yeah, I'm really sorry about that, Ed Baver, but yeah, you caught me at a bad time just because I have other... It is a lack of my own planning, really. It's the fact that I didn't do this application earlier. That is the reason I've got to call the stream short. But I did want to take a second and say thank you to all of you for being such a good audience tonight. And I know probably some of you wanted to see a little more progress in the game. I can only promise that for future episodes. And while I'm looking for somebody to host, I am going to show you, because I referred to this earlier, but how I talked about really enjoying Stellaris.
Clients.
Oh God, what's happening
here? It is a learned
here?
skill. It is not an innate skill.
What is going on?
I remember when I was in your shoes, I was worried when I started at Goldman Sachs that when I looked at the people who were really good at covering clients and really...
This guy looks like he's out of the Matrix. But yeah, this is a lecture from University of Virginia, I think. Sorry about that. I was just looking for somebody to host, not to have a YouTube video automatically playing. Anyways, okay, we got some people I can host for sure. But what I did want to just talk about was, I said earlier on about how Stellaris is really fun because it's just this nice canvas on which you can tell all of your science fiction stories. And, you know, you want to make the Imperium of Man, you can make the Imperium of Man. If you want to, you know, do your own special science fiction species, obviously here it's just trying to do something that's really inspired by sort of Philip K. Dick and his writing, and do a lot of emphasis on the espionage traits. That was sort of what drove this one. But as you can see, sort of each species has a backstory. All of these are ones that we played on stream. This is actually one that the person who did my emotes, the Eyes of Sin, she gave me a couple of prompts and I worked on. Some of these are fun. So I was talking a little bit earlier about how, like, sometimes you will choose Sometimes you will choose interesting game choices based on the species that you're playing. This was quite literally space cats. It's like I wanted to try and think of how many cat traits I could work out. And there were a couple of other things that I threw into this, but like I was like, I want to do the space cats, and I'm going to think of a lot of I'm going to think of a lot of cat traits that I'm going to put on for the space cats. So we killed, I think it was the ether drake. Anyways, we killed one of the Leviathans, and it gave us the options, like, what do you want to do with the body? And it's like, you can take a trophy, or you can do some other thing, like use it for research. And like, I almost always do the research, because it's a strategy game, right? Research always gives you better stuff. It gives you bigger guns to blow up your enemies with. But it's like, no, that's not what cats do. What do cats do, that just caught a mouse, right? It puts it on your doorstep as a gift. So in this case, the space cats definitely mounted whatever Leviathan they could on their wall. So, like sometimes not everything has to be like super serious and unsmiling. I'll give you a couple of examples. So there was one we were referring to in the Black Codex. We were talking about the most famous popular televangelist Francis Bayberry in Rhizome Capital. So this is the one that we did for Megacorps, and you better believe that this is based entirely around growth puns with the Plantoids DLC with Mega Corporation. So it was brand loyalty, franchising, egalitarian, xenophile, materialist. They're ingenious, thrifty, and non-adaptive. And Rhizome Capital is pleased to announce that it has successfully completed its first round of seed capital. Our plants are already running at full capacity, getting ready to offer you the finest goods and services the galaxy has to offer. Tax season got you down? Our bean counters at Deloitte are licensed in all jurisdictions and legal systems. Need help with housework? Rhizome Robotics' solar-powered photosynthetic assistants are ready to attend your every need. Under the sage guidance of Ebenezer Hawthorne, will make you green. Rhizome Capital. Leaf growth to the experts. I believe I just got 10 unfollows after that. I really like the Divine Zerite Covenant. This is when Lithoids came out. And so I was reading about like radio preachers and stuff like that around the time. And I had this idea. So I'll just do the background. So the reading of Luke chapter 19 that Samuel Parks Cadman gave on the morning of November 10th, 1929 did not produce any significant remarks at the time, yet it has broadcast out into space ever since. At exactly 11:13 local time, the broadcast reached the planet Zur, quote, and said to him, Master, rebuke thy disciples. And he answered and said unto them, I tell you that, if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out, was intoned across the planet, coinciding with the sudden achievement of sentience among the local Zurite clusters. Zuritan populace have since built grand cathedrals to the creator Gospel Luke and continue to meditate on its existence to this day. So this is, apparently this is all, like, spiritualist empires. I almost never play them. But I really wanted to try Inward Perfection, but I really liked this idea. So from what I understand, like, radio signals from Earth do in fact transmit out across the universe indefinitely. And I just loved this like cargo cult sort of idea that at this, pure coincidence, right? This is almost me kind of invoking Douglas Adams here, where this local mineral becomes like gains consciousness. The radio address of Samuel Parks Cadman, who was in fact a radio preacher, just has this particularly apropos bit of scripture, and that this species assigns this completely inappropriate weight to those particular words and is looking for the creator Gospel Luke, just because that happened to be the way things worked out. So, obviously things like Rhizome Capital and the Divine Zerite Covenant have their origins in maybe very silly things. But they do sort of lend themselves towards certain play styles and towards certain ideas. And, the one thing that I'm really looking forward to one day, like what you can do in this game is you can just hit the lock button on all of these. And so if I wanted, I could have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 species, 19 species game in which all of my previous creations are forced to be in the world. and we finally have it out to decide which one is the best one. But I don't know, like there's very few games where you can sort of say that thing about it. So it's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to Stellaris and why I was so happy to be given a key to do Nemesis. Because sometimes for me the value of the game is not just being able to make the numbers go up or to be able to take over other species. Sometimes you want to be able to sometimes you just want to be able to express yourself a little bit and deal with some of the things that people really enjoy. About science fiction. So I did not realize there were so many of you inside of the channel tonight. So I was originally I liked sometimes hosting some people who I do sometimes like hosting people who are able to who are present in my own channel. What I will do is I will say, if you guys would like to try out another channel, and I would actually recommend hanging out with Night Valiant, and it is purely by virtue of the fact that I think a lot of you are here for Stellaris, that I would like to keep it within the Stellaris community. Now, I don't know a lot of people who are streaming right now. So I just picked one at random here, and I think tonight we will raid Zarrox, who seems to be introducing Stellaris to a friend. So I don't know this creator. I hope they are, they're fun to watch. But I figured that I know a few of you liked talking about the game, like being able to share some ideas from it. And so I figure if we're introducing people to the game, it would be nice to give this nice little boost and help them out, and maybe be able to contribute. So I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to follow. I'll be streaming it on Monday again. For those of you who like watching my normal stuff, Wednesdays Industries of Titan, Friday more Cloudpunk, and I will have another video of Oblivion for you, not this coming Tuesday, but next Tuesday. Until next time.